to you today. But before we get started, I'm going to make some introductions and then we'll talk a few minutes. We have here today with us Mayor Terry Johnston, Commissioner Sam Kaufman, Commissioner Gregory Davila, and I believe on Zoom we have Commissioner Hoover, if she's there. And I'll give you the opportunity to say a few words in just a few minutes. I want to give you a rundown about what we will be doing today. We have a facilitator, Demetria Simpson. She's our housing director for the city of Key West. We also have legal representation, Ron Ramsey, and our planning director, Katie Halloran. So we're here today to listen, to give some information, talk about how we got here with the short-term rentals, and then we'll have legal do an overview of the ordinance, and we're going to have questions and answers later. But again, it's our focus today is to gather information, to come back and have more discussion. So with that, Mayor, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you very much. And I just want to reiterate Patty's welcome. Thank you all for taking time out of your day. It's a challenging topic, and we are here to listen. And I would like to particularly thank Commissioner Kaufman and Commissioner Davila for being in the room. Thank you, Commissioner Hoover, because every one of the city commissioners and the mayor needs to listen. And that's what we're here to do today, to listen. And as Patty has mentioned, hopefully this is the first of several workshops that we will have in order to garner input, your opinions, disseminate some information for you, because it is a challenging topic, as I mentioned. So we got lots to do this morning, lots to cover, so I'm going to pass this back to Patty. And once again, thank you all for taking time out of your busy days to join us and to share your input on this very important topic. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Kaufman?
Thank you all for being here. In my own personal small business, I had a crisis in the last few months. Several of you in this room I reached out to because I had an emergency for an employee who did not have housing. And my entire business was at risk. We have businesses in town that are closing. I've never seen that before. I don't think anyone in this room has seen that before. We have the worst crisis in affordable housing in our history of our memory. We have to do something. As of yesterday, we have 567 applicants for new business tax receipts. That means a potential 567 additional homes that will be used for 30-day rentals. 567 more 30-day rentals, more short-term rentals. Can we as a community sustain that? That's the question. And I understand the arguments and the concerns that the realtors have, and I appreciate that. My own personal home is affected by that. I understand that. But we have to understand that we have to limit the growth of the 30-day rentals in order to preserve our neighborhoods and put some limit to this. Otherwise, how are we going to sustain our community? So I want, if the realtors can comment on that, how we can address that issue, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold tight, hold tight. We'll get to questions and answers in just a little bit. I understand there's a problem with Zoom. We're trying to get the Zoom link on the website for the correct way to get in, so hopefully we'll get that resolved here in a few minutes. Okay. Again, it's a lot of tough questions will be asked today. This is a hard situation to be in. Let's all try to come together and find some solutions, and the commissioner's looking to you for that, and our residents as well. Commissioner Hoover, would you like to say something? All right. I haven't heard from her. So I'm going to hand the microphone over to Demetria, and she will be our facilitator today, and we'll get started.
Good morning. Good morning. I know that short-term rental, this discussion is a hot topic, and we are not exempt from this hot topic all across the country. This hot topic is at the forefront in those communities that are experiencing an increase in short-term rentals. They're being impacted within their neighborhoods, and Commissioner Kaufman, thank you so much for summing that up perfectly. And we are being impacted as it relates to housing availability, affordability, and tourism and economic development. Yes, it's a hot topic, but today, as City Manager Patty mentioned, we are here to as a great opportunity for you to provide your feedback. This is something that is important as part of the planning process. So I wanted to just say that, because when we first address hot topics in town meetings, workshops where we're divided up in groups and so forth, we hear controversial topic. We hear a lot of negativity around that topic. It's heated, contention, but the outcome, and it's seen all across the country, those who have been able to foster through it, it's positive. It creates opportunities. So there are mutual benefits to short-term rental, and there are solutions. And how we come to that, it's going to take community input. It's going to take us as staff and our commissioners, our policymakers, to hear your feedback and get your input so that we as staff can make those recommendations to them and work across the sectors to solve this problem that we have called our affordable housing crisis. Before I dive in, I just want to say I am the housing director, but today I am the facilitator. So that means, Jamie, if you get in a good conversation over there, I can't join you. So you were asked to sign in. If you have not done so, it's very important that we know that you were here today with us. And for those of you who are joining us on Zoom, if you can provide your contact information via Zoom in the comments, we'd really appreciate it so that we can capture all the people who joined us here today. You were also asked to and given a survey to complete. Gathering local data is a beginning to how we plan and move forward. And as part of our efforts this morning, giving you that survey of short questions will help us to begin putting that data together. And so if you haven't filled out the survey, please by all means do that. And what we're doing, if you are able to do it by your phone, with the QR code, we're collating that data, and I hope to share that information with you at the end of this meeting today. Let me, in everything that we do, especially workshops, and because of this being a sensitive topic, but that doesn't mean that we can't be comfortable in talking about short-term rentals and providing your feedback. So we want to make sure, this is what I'm going to be told all morning, to put the mic up to my mouth. But anyway, so be comfortable in providing your feedback, and that's going to happen before we share some information with you this morning. You will have that opportunity. Everybody in the room will have the opportunity to provide your feedback and your input. We do have staff in the room who will be helping to take those notes, scribe for us today to be able to capture the information, and it is being recorded. So whatever we miss, we will go back and get it. I want to also say that there are some of you that may be in the room who may have sent emails to the commission, the commissioners, the mayor, city manager. Those letters have been forwarded to staff, and we do have those. Just if you are listening, if you are here, we do have those as well. However, if you do want to reiterate what you communicated in your emails, please do so. You're free to do that. In terms of ground rules, everyone gets a chance to speak. If you have spoken often, please allow others who have not spoken to share. One person speaks at a time, please. Everyone's opinion and perspective is valid, and it is important. Everyone can help me as the facilitator to keep the discussion moving and on track. So please listen respectfully to others, and because it is very important, again, to make sure that we hear you, and the commission especially. They're here to listen, and we'd like to be able to make sure that they hear you. Commissioner Hoover, do we want to give Commissioner Hoover, would you like to say anything? I know that we were trying to get you earlier.
No, I'm going to let you go ahead and keep on moving.
Okay, I apologize, I didn't see you. So what we're hoping to accomplish today, this is mutually beneficial for us as the city, and for you all as well. Opportunity for you to provide your feedback and input, listening to your concerns from your feedback, and creating opportunities to work across organizations and the sectors to get a shared understanding around the priorities and goals around short-term rental. So coming to this workshop, this initial workshop today, coming with a common focus and getting to identifying what our short-term rental landscape is going to look like. That's important to us. That's going to be important for the communities across the city of Key West. Ultimately, we want to be able to generate those ideas and develop those recommendations so that we can bring that report back to the commission. So as far as our agenda today, what we're going to do is, because the primary focus here this morning is to gather your feedback and your input, we are going to, between myself and Katie, initially we're going to provide you with some information on the status of short-term rentals here in Key West. Katie is going to just give you some facts about it to just kind of set the stage for what we're going to be doing today. I will provide some information that from AirDNA that I pulled down to show some graphics of what our numbers look like within the last 2 years. And I think if you haven't already, and I know some of you in the room already have that data, you've already seen that, but I'd like to share that with you just to kind of give you the perspective of what we're dealing with, why we're having why we're being impacted in our neighborhoods, why there's an issue with availability of housing or affordability. And we don't have all of the facts yet, which is why the data that we collect from here on out going forward is so important to how we plan, how we're able to provide this information, those recommendations to our commissioners so that we can establish policy objectives going forward. Around short-term rentals, around our affordable housing. And I know that's a different discussion, but when it comes to connecting the dots, if short-term rental does impact housing affordability, housing availability, then we need to be able to show that through our data. And that's what we are doing, you know, especially beginning with this workshop. After we do that, we will have an overview of the short-term rental ordinance at your discretion, however you want to do that. We would do that, and then we will open up the floor for feedback and your input. Is that okay with everyone? Okay. So I'm going to have, make sure I have not left out anything. I am going to have Katie to come up and share some background information.
I'm Katie Halloran. Can you hear me? And I'm going to take some notes over here when I'm done chatting with you. So if I get something wrong, say I didn't say that, or we can fix it later. I'm the director of the planning department, and I'm here to support Demetria and help her with everything she's doing this morning. I'm just going to provide a few fun facts, but I wanted to acknowledge that we're really grateful that you're here, and we know that you're all kind of industry experts. You're managing properties. You might be managing your own property. You're managing other people's small businesses or investments. And you might own your own home in Key West or have a neighbor who has a short-term rental. So we want to acknowledge there's a really broad spectrum of stakeholders related to this issue. So Key West, we have two categories of rentals right now only. Transient rentals, these are our medallion properties that can be rented for 28 days or less. They require specific license from the city. The transient rental uses are permitted in only certain zoning districts. Sorry that's small, but I think you're probably familiar with that map. We have got our, if you see the green, that's zoning districts where transients are allowed. That's HRCC 1, HRCC 3, HCT, CG. That's our shopping centers, and that's our Duval Street areas. We have the yellow areas. Those are zoning districts where HPRD, where we have some conditions. It's kind of like a pump the brakes. There's some conditions in those zoning districts. And then we have the rest of the city where transient rentals are not technically allowed, but there's a lot still left over from the years where they were there 20 years ago, and now they're grandfathered. So you might have some of those in your neighborhood. The city licensing official has provided that we have 853 transient unit licenses. And then, so the second kind of rentals that we have are non-transient. That's everything else at this point in time. There are, to my knowledge, no particular regulations for the kinds of short-term monthly vacation rentals as long as the rental term is more than the 28 days. The only requirement for these is that you have a business tax receipt from the city licensing office, but we know that there's probably many more than those licenses that we can count that business tax receipt. We know that there's been a significant rise in the number of vacation rentals, and Demetria will share that with you. I think that's one of the reasons that we're here today. And vacation rentals, these are the things we're talking about that are on Airbnb, VRBO. Our chief licensing official has reported that there are currently 2,965 active non-transient rental licenses in the city. And as the commissioner mentioned, we've received about 567 new applications just since June. I'm going to pass it back over because really we're here to listen to you this morning. But if there are any other specific questions for me, I'll be here all morning. Thank you.
So part of the planning efforts that we're looking at, the National City Leagues of Cities created a guide for local governments on putting together planning regulations around short-term rentals. And I think they answered the call from local governments across the state where cities and towns were experiencing, such a large increase in the short-term rentals. And by me being new here, I've met some of you in the audience, but I'd like to hope that we have a diverse group of you here because as Katie mentioned, having everyone representative of the Key West community, it's important to have you here and to gain your input. So what I'd like to do is, when I was looking up the data around what our short-term rental looks like, the status of it, I went to AirDNA, and okay. So it's not, my apologies. Okay. So if you can see that, I took that from AirDNA, and I wanted to show you what AirDNA's map showed across Key West, the short-term rentals or non-transient rentals. And then this is the City of Key West map on the website. And so the first thing I thought about was, I don't know how true this data is. For one, the AirDNA map probably doesn't share the same definition as our city's definition for short-term rentals or non-transient rentals. But I thought this was interesting to see, which is all the more important to capture our own data here in Key West so that we can tell our own story, right? So Katie gave 2,965 based on what we have here, and I think that includes the applications, the BTR applications that were submitted. Is that right? Okay. So according to AirDNA, as of today, we have 2,268 short-term rentals here in Key West. That's 95% are entire homes. 5% of those are private or shared space. First one did. So here, because we are a popular tourist destination, the rise in short-term rentals has increased to over 2,000 as of today. This is what was so interesting to me. In July of 2020, 7.6 million that we made in the month of July in 2020. And then in July of 2022, almost $20 million in revenue. And so again, this data, this is why it's so important for us to drill down and get the facts so that we can know how true this information is. That's a big jump since 2020. Can you agree? And I said to myself, let that sink in, how does that happen? And we also looked at the daily rate for, I think back in 2020, it was $456 per night. In 2022, it was, I think it had risen up to $562 per night. But it didn't increase by much to drive this number up. So we had to have had a significant increase in short-term rentals across Key West, right? So I wanted to share that information with you because that's important to note, which is why, sharing your feedback, hearing your input, how we develop our policies, what those policy objectives are, is important for us in going forward. As we collect that data, we also want to be able to, if we are able to, have additional workshops, we can bring groups together across the sectors, we can drill down and talk about, you know, the issues that are impacting our community. We can start to talk about what those opportunities around short-term rentals look like. And so having this conversation today, even though we have proposed ordinances out there, you know, my ask to you is to, you know, keep an open mind that short-term rentals, there's opportunities, there are issues with short-term rentals. But there has to be, you know, conversation across the sectors to be able to do that. Is there any questions around that before we get to the feedback?
The number that you gave for the 400 and up to 500, that was for vacation rentals or hotels? Because hotels were up to $1,200 a night at that point.
Well, again, I took this information from AirDNA and Granicus on the, and that's why it's so important for us to be able to have, you know, the additional workshops so that we can drill down and understand what those numbers mean for us, okay? So when I clicked on, when you put in a city or whatever city that you're talking about, I mean, that you're looking for information on, they give you the median night average. They give you how long, you know, they were renting. And I pulled information that I thought would be relevant to this conversation today. Not to go into specific detail with you today about what those numbers mean, how did we get to those numbers. I wanted to just give you that snapshot.
But this ordinance is about units, not about revenue. Like theoretically, that could be the exact same number of units, and they're just charging more money, which the prices did go up. So it's not really relevant to the ordinance in any way.
Demetria, if we have questions, can
You're
you repeat
right.
their questions if we can't hear them?
No, but that's important. That's why you're here. That's why you're here to, you know, provide that feedback. So what does that mean for us?
And hold on, let me tell y'all, whenever you want to speak, let me bring the microphone to you because nobody's going to be able to hear it on TV or it won't be recorded if you're not talking
Right.
into it. So I'll bring it around to y'all.
I think it's important to note that the guest houses and the hotels now advertise on many of the same short-term rental sites that we advertise. So this number is likely capturing hotels and guest houses too, which if you look back to the first category thing that you sent, you can see it's largely populated on that scattergram compared to what you guys define. So I think we need to take that into account.
And it hasn't been defined yet, and which is hence why we are here today to have this discussion, to begin the discussion so that we can create the narrative across short-term rentals. And so again, having the conversation, determining what our landscape looks like is going to take exactly that, drilling down into the information. AirDNA, there are a lot of platforms out there that will tell your story all day long, but it's up to us to determine what that definition looks like.
Is this on? I just want to note, if we're going to be comparing numbers, we were under COVID lockdowns until June of 2020. So July in 2020 would be the day that we opened from the COVID lockdown. So I would argue that that's really not a very accurate number if we're going to be using it as a comparison.
Okay, I wanted to kind of gauge what you all were thinking as far as those numbers are concerned, and I would like for you to please share your thoughts on that when we get to the feedback. But I did open that up on purpose just to get some of your feedback, and so that, you know, I can be thinking, we can be thinking as staff what you're thinking. Okay.
Hold on.
Hold on, sir.
Demetria, we
All right.
also have
In regard to AirDNA, I'm experienced in the Airbnb type space in both the Tampa market here in Key West. Those numbers do not represent the city of Key West, and I found this out because I reached out to AirDNA independently for a property I was analyzing and found out that they cannot differentiate 33040. Instead, they pick up Monroe County. So the numbers that you're seeing on the right are Monroe County numbers. Those are not City of Key West, and that's directly from AirDNA.
I appreciate that. Also, too, when depicting information that they're taking, and that could be, when they told you that you're probably right. That could be the case. But again, this is what we have. So when the external communities look at our data, because we don't have that, if you go to the latest census and you look at housing, there's still a dotted line across the information for housing. And, I asked the question, why is that? Again, this is why it's all important for us to capture the data. That's our job. That's what we're supposed to do, so that we can help these platforms, to be able to depict what is really happening here in Key West. One more.
Demetria, we have a couple people on Zoom.
Excuse
me.
Those,
We have a couple people on
but
Zoom
anyway,
whenever you're ready.
are those numbers monthly as opposed to annualized? And second, do you have any idea how they compare to tax receipts?
Good question. I snapped too. Good question, and that's going to be captured. Thank you.
Do you have a comparison of overall how many housing units are in Key West compared to how many are now being used as short-term rentals? And in addition to that, are you able to track long-term rentals for periods of a year or greater, and whether or not there's a corresponding decrease in those as you get the increase in the short terms?
Right now, we, as far as the type of software that we have to be able to capture that, we are exploring that software so that we can capture a lot of that data, okay? And right now, we pull from different platforms to be able to try to determine where we are today. And so once we have that type of software that we're looking at right now, hopefully that we will have that before the end of the year. Going into next year, we like to be able to capture that information so that we can be transparent in showing the community what those numbers really look like today. Because a lot has happened since COVID. A lot happened pre-COVID, and being able to capture that data to get us to where we are today so that we can define what our housing market looks like today and how we can establish the policy objectives so that we can go after resources to help us to develop or preserve the affordable housing that we do have, repurposing, preservation measures, whatever that be the case, and helping individuals who are in a space to purchase homes. Bringing those types of resources to Key West is so critical because we need that resource to be able to leverage so that we can have homeownership opportunities. We can provide housing opportunities for our workforce. But in order to do that, we have to capture that data, because when we go after different types of funding, whether private or public, they always want to know what your data looks like. So we have to be able to tell that story, have that compelling argument via the data that we have. And right now, it's inconsistent. It is inconsistent. And that's why we're here today, so that we can begin to define what that landscape looks like.
Hello?
Hello?
We have
it on?
somebody.
Is it on? Okay. Hi.
The big question that needs to be asked is how many people that own houses, particularly in Old Town, that spent $2-3 million on their property, if you eliminated short-term rentals, how many of them are going to rent their houses out at a severely discounted rate to service industry? You're not conquering the problem by doing away with Airbnbs and short-term rentals.
I have a little bit of data on that. Can you hear me? Okay. We did a Survey Monkey on that with our owners, and 90% said they would not rent their properties at all. And we have a whole bunch of these to share with you. My question is, as far as the statistics goes, which never really came into my thought before, but I've had 5 phone calls from people that have long-term rentals now that rent on a month-to-month basis because they've had so many problems getting tenants out in the past. Now they're nervous that this is going to affect them because it's going to force them into a 6-month rental, which they will not do because of the problems getting bad tenants out. So you have a whole nother category of people that do rent long-term on a month-to-month basis that are very happy to continue going that way, but now are in a panic that they have to get into a 6-month situation. I just wanted to bring that aspect up because it was something that I didn't really think about before.
Thank you, Brenda.
Hi, I'd just like to address a couple things. Is this on? Can you hear me? First of all, let's kind of rewind tape and go back to what Mr. Kaufman was saying in the beginning of the opening. The 535 new applicants are people in a panic because you told them they're never going to be able to get one. Those are not people that are ready to turn their house into a rental. So before we pad y'all's data, let's get the data straight. I had people, old conks, calling me saying, what, I'll never be able to do it if I don't do this? No, you're never going to be able to do it. People are asking me to go down there and apply for a license for them just in case one day ever they want to sell their house or they want to go for a 3-month vacation and rent their house when their kids go away or something. They don't want to be told no, they can't do it. That's where those applications came from, for the most part. Secondly, I've been traveling for the past 7 months with the board. We've been all over the country. Not one hotel have I checked into has been staffed. Not one restaurant I've been to has been staffed. No one in this country, I don't know if y'all watch the news, has staff. This is not a localized problem. Of course, it multiplies because we're on a small island and things are expensive. But this is not a Key West problem. I hate to tell you. Turn on the news. Thirdly, a house now in the Key West market at an affordable rate is now $850,000. An $850,000 mortgage with property taxes and insurance adds up to $6,000 a month. Now, Mr. Kaufman, could your employee have afforded $6,000 a month? Please do. I'm just asking. I mean, that's what my point is. There's nothing left really affordable on the island. We're all going through it. We all have growing pains.
District 2, sir.
Well, let's hear it. Please respond.
Can
I
we-
live in Newtown. That's where I live.
Can we reel this back in, if that's okay?
But I think I should be able to respond.
Yes. Mhm.
So, everybody, look. Go to Harris Avenue. Go to 12th Street, okay? You see signs on fences that are historically conch family homes that say vacation rentals on them in Newtown, in our neighborhoods, okay? I'm telling you, go to the corner of 12th and Harris. You'll see it. Go on 12th Avenue. You'll see it. We have never had short-term rentals in our neighborhoods in the terraces. You think we should have short-term rentals in the terraces? Does anybody think that? I mean, we do have them. Do you have them on? Do you have them?
Can I tell you the reason that's changed, Mr. Kaufman?
I understand the market's changing.
Well, no, it's not the market. Let me tell you why that's changed.
if I
Because
could
in the
finish.
Harris's, back when you're talking from your era, when I moved here, my first house was on Harris Avenue, and it was $220,000. Now that same house is $850,000. You have to be able to pivot to sometimes pay your mortgage. If somebody has to go away for 2 years and they want to come back and they don't want to sell their home because they know they'll never be able to get back into the Key West market, they can't rent their house long term and pay their mortgage. They can't do it.
We have, in my district, we have Solana Village, we have Santa Clara, we have houseboats, we do have the last of affordability in areas. If we don't do something, the rooms in Solana Village, the rooms in Santa Clara, the apartments in Santa Clara will all become vacation rentals. Because, quite frankly, I know you have customers. They're from out of town. They want to buy property in Key West. How are they going to afford, or how is the return going to make sense to buy the property? How many of your customers ask you that, right? That's what they're looking for. I get it, but we have to put our community first. We have to do that. We have to right now. Why not at least, my proposal to you to think about, if there's such a concern about marketability and the impact on these houses, let's try the ordinance for a year, 18 months. Okay. Or let's put it on the ballot in Key West.
Okay.
Maybe we'll put it on the ballot because I
Give me one
guarantee you we need to do something.
Okay. Before I'll give you the first opportunity to stand up and speak, Jamie. Again, let's be mindful. This is some good debate to have. We can make this into some good conversations. We may not always like what we hear, but this is an opportunity, and let's see this as an opportunity. But help me as the facilitator, help us to control this conversation, okay? I did say it could get heated. I did say that, didn't I? But we need to capture this information, because a lot of the conversations that is going to take place here today, you have no idea the opportunities that may come out of this in terms of ideas, recommendations. So we are capturing this information. There are other people, staff in the room that's capturing this information, and it's also recorded. And so your questions, I opened it up on purpose to talk about those numbers, but we will get to the feedback portion. I want to give Ron an opportunity. Again, let's have some positive. It may sound negative, but I'm thinking it's positive, because we need to hear it. We need to hear it. So help me help you. And I promise you, the questions that some of you asked today, we're going to take those questions and you will see it again in the form of some kind of response. But give us the opportunity to report back to our commissioners so that we can generate some of these ideas and recommendations. Is that fair? Okay, thank you.
Demetria.
Let me give,
Ma'am.
You'll be the first to.
Demetria, ma'am.
Somebody called me.
We have some comments on Zoom here. Can we give them the opportunity to ask their questions, please? I can unmute them. I can announce them and unmute them for you.
Okay. Where's Dorian? Come stand by me and help me.
I'm going
Okay.
to unmute them one
All
at
right.
a time. We're going to start with.
Okay, go ahead, Jason.
Thank you. We're going to start with Patty Edwards.
And I'm going to do this because I wasn't looking at the monitors. Thank you for
You're welcome.
bringing that to my attention.
Patty Edwards, do you have a question?
I think it was answered, but you have to understand, I think, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. You have to understand that a lot of people are investing in these properties and maybe with long-term retirement in mind, ending up in Key West. But in the meantime, they're buying the properties and they have to have some way of paying for the properties so they can afford to keep the house, their dream home, dream retirement home, whatever. And honestly, and I think too, a lot of the workforce doesn't live in Key West anyway. They live farther away up the Keys, like, in different spots. So it's just, I don't know. We are in affordable housing up here in Indiana, and we do own some properties down there. And we have rural development properties. Has anybody tried to pursue anything like that, like the tax credit properties that do help people with limited incomes and things? Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm not being real clear and I'm kind of jumping around and I apologize for that, but that's, it's needs to have something that's fair for both the property owner, especially, I mean, if it's on the ballot in Key West, that's not fair to all of the property owners that don't live in Key West because we can't vote. but yet we pay the taxes and we do everything else, that other property owners in Key West do. So anyway, okay, that's all. Thanks. Sorry.
Miss Patty, thank you so much for your comment. Jason, if you don't mind, I would like to get back to Ron, please, and we'll hold those comments on Zoom and out in the audience until he has had the opportunity to speak.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ron Ramsing. I'm the Chief Assistant City Attorney for the City of Key West. Just some background, some history on what is before the Commission for consideration. In the springtime, we were directed by the Commission to come up with some ordinances, some measures that can hopefully address some of the affordable housing concerns that we're experiencing in the city. On May 3rd, Sean, my boss, presented a memo that I drafted to the City Commission regarding transient rentals, non-transient rentals, just kind of an overall 30,000-foot view of where we're at. At that meeting on May 3rd, we were unanimously directed to draft an ordinance that addresses 30-day plus rentals similar to what's in Miami Beach. So I got to work and drafted what you see before you now in its current iteration. Just some highlights of the ordinance. You would be eligible for this regulatory permit, and I say that word carefully, regulatory permit, if you currently have a non-transient BTR, business tax receipt, on a date. Now, currently that date's May 3rd, because that's the first date that this was discussed in a general public forum. If you do hold one of those BTRs, you could keep on trucking, so to speak. You convert your BTR into a regulatory permit, and you just keep on going. The folks that would not be eligible for this new regulatory permit are folks that were not operating historically with a BTR as of May 3rd. That's just a reality. So that's designed to capture what they call conforming uses. If you've been doing this lawfully, you can continue to do it lawfully. If you were not doing it lawfully, you cannot continue to do it. That's, in a nutshell, what the ordinance says. This does not address or otherwise regulate in any way transient rentals, which I got to correct, it's less than 30 days. That's 18-601. It's in your ordinance. It's been there for decades. The state of Florida regulates two types of, well, they only regulate one, really, and that is less than 30 days, which is what 18-601 reflects. Anything greater than that, unless you're a multi-family, multi-story type situation, the state of Florida does not regulate. So that's where this ordinance intends to fill that void. It tracks in large measure the Miami Beach ordinance, which you guys are all welcome to look at. It's 142-1111, 90% the same. So if you do qualify for this regulatory permit, you're regulated similar to how we regulate transient rentals. You get a medallion, you have information for a 24-hour representative for complaints, you renew it every year, required to have insurance, and the cost is $300. So that's it in a nutshell. From my perspective, whether or not the ordinance is fair or, whether it's a good policy, whether it's really going to be a magic pill, that's for the commission to decide, where your input is welcome. But the legality of it, I feel pretty comfortable in it. So, we were directed to bring forward several measures, not only this one, but we also passed the notice ordinance that recently passed a couple meetings ago for when you terminate a lease or increase a new lease rental by more than 5%. So there's no magic pill. It's going to be several measures that's going to take to even make a dent in the issue. So that's really all I have to say.
Thank you, Ron. Okay. I see hands going up. So this is an opportunity. We're going to move forward with opening up the floor to provide your comments. Again, this is an opportunity for you to provide your feedback. Our commissioners are listening, we're listening, and we are capturing this information, okay?
All right, and to make it easier on y'all, instead of having to hold your hands up, they're just going to pass a mic on this side. We're going to pass a mic on that side. So everybody will have the microphone in your hand at some point if you want to say something. We're going to start with Jamie, and then the first person who wants to speak over here, go back and forth so it's even, and then everybody will get the mic all the way down. Just hold the mic close so that everybody at home can hear it, and it's recorded on the TV for y'all to listen to later.
I'm going to highlight the ground rules again, and I will certainly remind you to be respectful of others. Jamie?
Good morning. Can you hear me? I don't know that, is it on? Okay. First of all, I want to thank the commissioners, the managers, and Madam Mayor for giving us this opportunity in this workshop that's much needed. We all have a common goal here, and we need affordable housing. That's our goal. That's what we were told this ordinance was supposed to do. My name's Jamie Caballero. I'm born and raised here, and I own Key West Residential Property Management, and I'm on the front line of long-term rentals. I also own Key West Vacation Properties and Realty, and I do vacation rentals as well. I'm very involved in the local board, the state, and national, and I've been in several meetings with these same discussions. Please hear all the stakeholders out. That's both sides of this. We're here to work together to get a common goal. I was on a panel in 2015. We were having the same conversation that we didn't have enough units. I'm here today to be the voice for the locals, right, that have been here for years. The ones that were born and raised here and the ones that were transplanted, right? So you have these people now, they're at their point of retirement. And they want to go visit their grandchildren, and they want to be able to rent their homes for at least 2 months, 3 months, and pay. I mean, look at our electric bills. Look at our insurances. Look at our taxes. It's just to help so they can do what they've tried to do for years, which is work very hard for your community and retire and go visit their grandchildren. The reason for the 567 is everybody is nervous, and they're running out and saying, hey, wait a minute, we have a plan. We're supposed to retire, rent our property a little bit, and have paradise. That's what people do. We have the luxury of people renting in paradise. These monthly renters aren't the bad actors. They're who the bad actors are the ones that don't have property managers. People come to me all the time that have owned for years, and they're doing long-term, and now this year they wanted to dabble in vacation rentals. And I'm the very person that's telling them, why do you want to do that? You have 12 months of income. You're helping your community. Don't switch over. Some of them are hard-headed, and they want to do it. They're trying it right now, and in September, they're not getting income where they would have if they had a long-term rental. So yes, they're the ones that have the BTR. They have the chance to do it, but it's going to fix itself. They're going to see that they don't have 12 months of income, and they're sitting there playing and dabbling in it and getting a month here, a month there. Even though it might be double, it's still not 12 months of secure rent. So I see both sides of that. The other thing I wanted to say is, I went on myself here. I like to write it down because I always forget the important stuff. So, more importantly, this is what I have to touch on. Anything that's become before the commission has had a study. I mean, even when my husband was a Key West Fire Union president for 11 years, anytime something came in front of the city, they did a study, and then they had what they needed to make a decision. To do this without that study, and Demetria touched on it today, we need data. AirDNA isn't the data we need. That's a mixture of hotels. It's a mixture of VRBO and Airbnb. Some people do on both platforms. That's not a true number to look at. I mean, even if you took this to a referendum, let the voters pick. You know what I mean? Let them vote. Let them come out and have a voice. Let them say whether they want it or not. That's what's important. It's the community to make this decision. But to drastically graft it from a 509 chapter ordinance and then have to adjust it, I mean, it's just not the way to do it. I mean, this decision should be made by the citizens. Ron did what he was asked to do, put something together. Well, yeah, put it together. Let's look at it. Let's get everybody's input
and make it work. Cutting out these monthly rentals isn't going to be affordable, isn't going to help affordable housing. Now, you have the people that bought right now. If you tell them they can't rent, they're not going to rent. We're not going to get those homes. But the ones that are older that I've been managing since 2003, and they're trying it, and they're going to see for themselves it's not going to work. Those people can afford to give rents to our community to get it going. Yeah, we do have a problem, as Derek mentioned. Everybody has the same problem. But as a community, let's come together. Let's solve it. Let's work on what's going to make it right. This isn't it, and I'm hoping with another workshop, or maybe even two, we'll get with the city. We'll give them the data. We'll get your input and make this what it needs to be to help our community. That's all.
When you all come up to speak, can you please state your names? And please take no more than 2 to 3 minutes to speak to give everybody an opportunity.
Nope.
So it's
Talking
live?
good. It's already on.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Todd Santoro. I own a home at 818 Whitehead Street, and I've got 2 points to make. One, it's a residential neighborhood, and I'm wondering why in residential neighborhoods I can't open up a business in my own home and invite customers over to my home. So I see these rentals as businesses. They have a business tax receipt, and they operate as a business in a residential neighborhood. The second point is, let's put this to a referendum. Let's put this on the ballot, and the people that live here can vote. The people that don't live here don't get to vote. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you for your time.
I just have one more thing to say, and it goes back to the 525 or 500 whatever applicants. You know, if we go around residential neighborhoods now, and we all know, we've all seen them on the MLS, those few transients that were left out there in the non-transient zones, we see their value, right? I mean, you got a $3 million house, and the next door house is worth $850 or $900 because they don't have the transient. This is exactly what we're going to do to the people who are doing what you guys don't like. We're going to reward them. We're going to give my neighbor, who is 3 doors down, is the only vacation rental on my block. So his house is going to go up in value 5 times when this thing goes through, and the rest of us who weren't transient rental, our value is going to go down. So you are affecting property prices big time by doing this. So that's the other reason people rushed to get this license, because they didn't want their value to go down, because they didn't have the capability of getting this new coveted, I can already see them on the MLS, coveted BTR. Hold on.
Hello, everybody. My name is RJ Hasty. I live here in Key West, 934 Truman Avenue. I'm here for a lot of people that aren't here. I see a lot of business owners in here. I myself own my own business, and I work very hard. It is extremely hard to get affordable housing here in Key West, and I'm losing friends by the day. I used to bartend. I used to serve tables. I have a lot of friends here that they're regular people. A lot of you guys, most of you guys probably have a lot more money than me, and good on you. There's nothing bad about earning a lot of money. However, there are a lot of people started like you and are trying to get where you are. They have nowhere to live. Like, who's going to cut the grass? Who's going to serve the tables? Who's going to make the drinks? People, I believe Patty from Indiana said people are coming from, most of the service workers don't live here. I lived in Old Town the whole time I served, the whole time I bartended. I lived in Old Town. It is expensive to live in Old Town now, and I'm fortunate to own my own business now and live in Old Town. However, we keep asking people that don't live here. I mean, Patty, you don't live here. The United States military and our armed forces workers, they're the only people that don't live here that count. The only people. I mean, they can vote here because they don't live here, but they're homesteaded here because they're in the military. And that's something we should afford them, but not Patty in Indiana. We don't owe her anything. We really don't. Us citizens of Key West, we owe you nothing, Patty. I hope you can come back here and be a citizen of Key West, but your plans, we don't owe you anything for those plans. And another thing, this is a money-making opportunity for us in Key West. I mean, you guys are working hard, and you're outgunned. We had those numbers up there with all the millions of dollars being made. You're outgunned. Ron, you're outgunned. They got more money than you could ever think of having and more attorneys. You're outgunned. But there's a solution. We can tell. We have all these amounts of licenses, but we have extra actual rentals. Let's find these people, and let's not just kind of find them. I heard $300 for the application, up that. For our people that are scared and they're putting out their applications in now, that's good for this. Put them in, and cut them off. Every time one of those homes gets sold, because the September income is going to hurt them and they're thinking, oh, maybe I should do this long term, good. But every time you sell that home, no new application for that home. We don't have enough people to work here. And every one of you business owners in here, you know that. Commissioner Kaufman started off very well saying about his employee. We just watched Lost and Found closed, and that was a great business here in Key West. They have two businesses. It's not a failing model. Their actual model works over there at Old Town. However, a bunch of my friends just got laid off. Luckily, they can find a job in 3 seconds because everybody needs employees. However, they had a great job, and they don't need to lose it. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Greg Oropeza. I represent the Key West Association of Realtors, and I also am a real estate attorney. My primary practice is transactional work. A couple things. First of all, I think you got to look at why we're here. We had a pandemic that none of these numbers show pre-pandemic numbers. And our federal government pumped an absurd amount of money into the economy and dropped interest rates, creating this frenzy, which the market is now correcting. You see interest rates rising. They're going to continue to rise. You saw what the Fed just said at their last meeting. These are market corrections that are going to occur. It happened in 2006, 2007, 2008. Is that enough? Probably not. But is it enough to maybe look at alternatives like this gentleman just said? Take this revenue, tax it, increase the price, increase the cost to do these rentals. Use that money to build a fund for down payment assistance like the SHIP program. Use that money to build a program where businesses can partner with the city on rental support. So I think that, are there options? Are there solutions? Yes, but we need to meet. What's interesting is that the city posted a report on the website in support of the ordinance, and it said that one of the items that you have to ensure in a short-term rental is ensure any regulation of short-term rentals does not negatively affect property values and property tax revenue. We have the highest property tax basis right now, yet the city increased taxes by, I believe, roughly 12%. What happens when these values are going to take a 20 and 30% hit? Who's going to pay that? All of us in tax revenue. The second is, and this is from the city's publication, give permanent residents the option to occasionally utilize their properties to generate extra income from short-term rentals. Again, this is the example of the Key West conch who's been here 50 years, wants to go visit family for 3 months and just wants to rent it out. So this, I was interested to see where this report came from, and it came from Host Compliance, which is Granicus. And Granicus had a great article from a code compliance manager in Nevada who basically expressed how they had this joint effort between the stakeholders and the government and came out with an ordinance that they said not necessarily appeased everybody, but it was fair. And I think that's the goal we're looking for. That's the goal, at least I know my clients looking for and their members, is something that's fair. And the way we get to fair is a joint effort. We don't get to fair by a May 3rd date that nobody knew about. So second reason we're here is May 3rd. We probably wouldn't be here talking about this if May 3rd didn't exist. Nobody knew about that. It wasn't published on an agenda. It wasn't talked about. May 3rd is probably the biggest elephant in this room, and probably the easiest thing to work on. So you had all these people who purchased properties relying on the ability to one day rent in the future, and then you get May 3rd. Let's start with talking about May 3rd. Are the 567 really going to rent? No, it's a panic. And you have people drop out. It's a fluid number. Lastly, I hope that the city's looking at some of the lawsuits that have been filed in the state. You know, these are important, and I'm not here threatening anything. I'm just saying we need to learn from that. You've got one in Orange County. You've got one in Fort Myers. These are all rent control. The primary purpose of this ordinance is rent control. It's prohibited by the Constitution. And then you've got one in New Orleans that just came out. New Orleans short-term rental was shut down based on the Commerce Clause. I think we need to look at these. Let's not rush into them. Let's look at them. I'd welcome the opportunity to speak with Ron. I'm sure the other attorneys here, Bart, I saw Peter, I saw Wayne Smith. Let's have a collaboration and let's work on something that's fair and equitable. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kate Baldwin. I am actually a local, born and raised. Actually went to elementary school in the same room, and those pictures were there, which is kind of cool. It's a lot smaller than I remember it. So why are we here? We're here because obviously there's a lack of inventory for rentals. I understand that. My stepdad owns a landscaping business, and poor guy, he works 80 hours a week right now, and shouldn't be, you know? He does all the military bases, so who wants to do lawn that doesn't have a felon? So all the felons can't work for him, and so he's having a hard time. My mom went out there and pulled weeds on military base, so I get it. I get you, sir. I was born and raised here. I'm very fortunate to have been born and raised here, so I do have a really great family. My daughter and I actually live downstairs to my parents, so it was a choice I made. And I actually like it because I'm a single mom and she can run up the stairs to Nana. My point is, I think we're going about this a little bit differently than I expected it. I didn't hear anybody say this, but how many houses do we actually need? So if we know how many houses we need, then we know how many houses we need to build or on that point. I just actually coincidentally ran into Steve Henson right outside, and he just told me he has 4.5 acres of land in Stuck Island that he has been trying to put, and I don't know the rules and the regulations. I asked him to come in with me. He said no, but he said you can bring this up. He's been trying to put affordable housing. 4.5 acres in Stuck Island. Granted, I don't know all the, there's all kinds of hoops you have to go through to get a permit these days, so we all know about that. We don't have to go there. But he also told me that he has a house on Fleming. He's renting it for $1,800 to somebody that works downtown, and he is losing $6,000 a year because his taxes are higher. So now not only are we taxed, so now he's getting taxed because it's not his primary home. He's doing long-term, affordable, and his taxes, he's not even paying his insurance on it. I don't know. We've got to see that little apartment is $1,800, which is affordable, I think, downtown, but he's losing $6,000. And he's also got, this is one guy that I sat outside and had coffee with before I got here. So he has 4 acres in Stuck Island. He would love to put affordable housing. Those are the kind of people we need to collaborate. Get him passed, because I think she was talking about there's a mangrove going through. So I know we want to save the mangroves. I'm all about it. But there's just things that we have to come up with. I think that we need to focus primarily on how many houses we need. Because I'm going to tell you, this gentleman that just spoke, I know that none of my buyers who bought a house last year are going to rent it to anyone. They'll just leave it empty. And so all the revenue that we're getting from now, if you go to 6 months, all those bars are going to be empty, right? Or they're going to people aren't going to come. You can see that vacation rentals make a profit. So they're bringing in people. I'm a real estate agent. I'm a new one, but I'm very tuned. I'm a dork, so I love numbers. I'm always crunching numbers. And the reality is, if you get a rate with the monthly, they're not going to rent to bartenders, to kids. They're just going to sit there empty. So, also, one more point, military. The military needs to get on their booty and start fixing their houses, because they're taking up a lot of inventory in Key West. Military homes used to be a big deal. Sigsbee, because my dad does all the bases, the homes are falling apart. They're not all occupied. They're having to come out and get homes. I just sold a house on Flagler that was all guys from Coast Guards, because the bunks aren't working. They need to fix their housing too. So military also needs to fix their housing. That's just a thought.
Hi, my name is Lee Clark. I live here in the Meadows. And just one observation I did want to make about, I agree with everybody, we need more workforce housing. But when you minimize, in my opinion, the short-term rentals, that's going to negatively impact a lot of the workforce because they do employ a lot of people. Not only is it servers and bartenders downtown, but it's also housekeepers, landscapers, the guys that clean the pools, and these places, all the construction workers, they have to be maintained and kept up while the owners aren't here and renting them out. So if you negatively impact the short-term rentals, you're not going to need as much workforce housing because a lot of our workforce won't be able to afford to live here because they're not going to have jobs or have to leave.
I want to give some people on Zoom an opportunity to speak, so I'll go back and forth. Jason, can you open it up for feedback from our Zoom audience?
Absolutely. We have a Dr. Tom Dadisman. Tom, if you'd like to speak, you've got 3 minutes. You have to unmute.
Hello, this Tom Dadisman. I live here in Key West, and I just want to reiterate one of the facts that Mr. Oropeza made, and it involves the pre-COVID numbers versus what we've seen since 2020, July to July 2022. And I wanted to say that my informal look at some of the vacation spots around the country, they're all experiencing the same sort of increases in numbers. Palm Springs, Cape Cod, Hilton Head, Jackson Hole, Big Sur, Sedona are just some of the ones I've looked at. And it seems to me just like the numbers that were used to bring in the new airport construction, which peaked and are now falling, the same numbers apply to vacation rentals. People are wanting to stay onshore versus travel abroad. So our numbers increased exponentially. So that's all I wanted to say. Needs better numbers, need to look at it more closely. And of course, I also agree the May 3rd was huge. That's all I had to say. Thanks.
I think we have, the next one we have is Lori. If you would like to speak, you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Lori, and I live in northern Wisconsin. My husband and I recently purchased a home in Key West. It's always been our dream to live there, and indeed, we will be moving there sometime in 2023. In the meantime, our home actually has 2 units. One of them is currently rented to one of your workforce people. We have set out to rent our other unit short term until we can indeed move down there. And we're operating, I applied for all the correct business tax receipts and all that, but because I didn't have it on May 3rd, I'm entering into short-term rental contracts with people who want to visit Key West, and yes, it's for more than 30 days or at least 30 days. I don't want it. I don't have a transient license. I'm not trying to speak for one, but now I'm entering into these contracts, and because of that May 3rd date, I'm wondering what happens. I don't understand how we can even talk about backdating to something like that, and it just seems to be such a random date. And I would take a little bit of issue with the people that say, that we don't have a stake in the community because we don't live there. We're going to pay a buttload of taxes on our property. Our taxes are going to more than double from what the prior owner paid, according to the last information we received. Our prior owner, I don't think the people we bought from, I don't believe they had a business tax receipt license. They weren't renting. Their house was basically sitting empty. And because we want to be able to come down and use the house when we want to, Renting long-term isn't an option for us. I actually talked to a couple of people though about renting long-term. I talked to both of the parties that were displaced in the recent duplex fire and offered up our home to both of them as a short-term solution while they were searching for other housing. You know, we want to be part of the Key West community. I'm just really frustrated that that May 3rd date is going to perhaps make null and void the agreements that I've entered into with renters. And I don't know what's going to happen if I have to cancel those. I don't feel like you guys have enough information to put this ordinance together. Comparing July of 20 data to July of 22, that shouldn't even be a comparison. That 2020 in my mind is a year you shouldn't look at for pretty much any kind of numbers that mean anything. Like what happened to 2021? Where were those numbers? I'd be interested to see them. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Lori. Next, we have Joanne. Joanne, if you'd like to speak, you have 3 minutes. Joanne, would you like to speak? All right, well, let's move on and let her work out her issues here. We have John Wooten. If you would like to speak, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is John Wooten. I live on Grinnell Street. And what I'm listening today is, while there's a problem, it sounds like we have a workforce housing problem. As everybody has pointed out, that is not unique to Key West. That is all across the country. Moreover, what we're saying is we have plenty of housing. It's just too expensive because people are renting it out on a monthly basis. So what we're really talking about is you want to create a rent control system, and that is just not appropriate. If the city believes that this is a workforce housing issue, then it becomes a government issue. And so why put a government issue on the backs of private persons? If hotels, bars, restaurants think they have a problem with workforce housing, you know, they can afford to buy one perhaps, but it's really a government issue. Maybe the government can build workforce housing, then they can build it, they can own it, they can rent it and maintain it and charge rent and lease only to people working in the city of Key West. The other problem is, by not having a rental license, you devalue everybody's property. I would anticipate that the property to be devalued at least 25%, maybe more. And that's just a significant loss of an asset for all the residents of Key West and whether residents or not, all the property owners of Key West. So I would urge the city and all involved to get together for a proposal, but it's really a government issue. And, you know, find a place, build a workforce housing issue. And, you know, don't put rent controls on the backs of private landowners merely because we need service workers. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have Joanne back on. Joanne, if you would like to speak, you've got 3 minutes.
We have one more on Zoom, and then we'll bring it back to you all. Okay.
We have three total if Joanne wants to speak, but I think maybe she's having some audio problems. Joanne, are you there? All right, we're going to move on to Sandy Guthrie, and then we have 2 more after that.
Hello.
Go ahead, Sandy. You've got 3 minutes.
Yes, I have to agree with Greg Orpeza. I'm a 23-year homeowner in Key West, and I rented my house to locals for 6 years. I moved back to it last year in October, so I let my rental license lapse. But of course, I renewed it knowing what they had coming because I want that option. And I now live in my house for 7 months of the year So now I can't rent it for that 5 months. I'm a single girl that worked 2 jobs to buy that house, and I don't like that they're going to tell me what I can and can't rent to. And I'm in Old Town because I now will let my house sit empty. So I have to agree with the girl that was on the vacation rental business, and definitely agree with Greg Orpez on the May 3rd date. So after 6 years, because I didn't renew, I don't have a license on May 3rd. I don't consider that date fair to people. I don't think it's also going to solve the worker shortage, because I don't plan to ever rent my house again to locals, because I want to live in it at least half the year. And the cost is so exorbitant. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Sandy. We appreciate your comments. We have Paul Hayes. If you would like to speak, you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Paul Hayes. I live on Johnson Street. I'm a 30-year resident of Key West. I also own Rent Key West Vacations, so I've been in the vacation rental industry for 22 years. We have been talking for 20 years that we have a shortage of affordable housing. We had a housing czar that presented information to us in 2003. So this is not new news, and we certainly are not going to solve this with one simple ordinance that we're looking at right now. I have spent a lot of time in the past few weeks going through AirDNA data, because obviously there was a lack of data available to us. I've gone through so much of it now, but even if you just look at the current AirDNA data, it says there are 27% of those 2,000 some odd rentals that you're looking at that have a 7 to or more day rental minimum. So even if you just take 27% of 2,000, you're only at 500 rental units. Well, keep in mind, 7-night minimums are also in Truman Annex. So if you removed all of the Truman Annex rentals, that would take that down even further. If you want to add back in rentals, illegal rentals of 5 or 10% of the units, you're still at about 400 to 500 units that we're talking about. So what kind of a dent can 400 units actually make in this situation that we're dealing with? We're coming up on season. You heard somebody, I think her name was Lori, just spoke about the fact that, you know, she's got rental contracts. We've got other clients who are in the same boat as Lori, who bought their property, weren't ready to start renting, so didn't get their rental license yet. Now we don't know what to do for high season coming on. So time is a big issue here. I also think that the city needs to factor in the fact that we're getting dangerously close to the expiration of Truman Annex licensing, transient licensing. How does that impact this ordinance? You have potential for 200 more units coming on the market, probably, from that. Are they going to be monthly units, or are they going to transition to long-term units? There needs to be a thorough evaluation of this. If you want a bit quick stopgap, you may want to consider putting a moratorium on conversion of issuing building permits for a conversion of multifamily residences to single-family residences. We know that's where a lot of the loss of long-term housing comes from. So maybe as a stopgap, you need to look at that. We definitely need the data to really show this. I don't think this ordinance really should be even on the books at this point as potential. I think it needs to be rescinded, and we should get the data and start over next year with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. We have one last speaker here in the community. We have Julie Brown. If you'd like to speak, please do.
Hi, thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Julie Brown. I've been here coming up on 20 years. long-term residents and workers are leaving in droves now because of this housing situation. So for those of you who say 400 units may not make a dent, I firmly disagree with you. I think at this point, any units would make a dent. I also, the July 2020 comparison, I'll just mention that July 2020, this town was packed. So to say that that is a far off date to utilize is not really accurate. Obviously, you could slide it a few months and I think you'd still see a dramatic increase. And the units that show up on the STAR report that were used in the slide there, if just because they're rented through Airbnb would not mean that there is additional income. So that's not being double represented as stated. So the housing issue, as many have stated, is not unique to Key West, but what is unique to Key West is our landscape, our lack of space to expand and to build. Yes, the city has been very proactive in housing, and I applaud them for that, building and proposing new workforce housing. We can't build our way out of this, and we are going to have to do some things. I do think the military needs to step up. I don't know how we can make them do that, but I agree with that comment by Kate. I don't know if the fines that we can issue for people renting illegally are restricted by the state, like so many other things. But if they are not, then we should definitely raise those. It needs to be pretty high to discourage. Right now, there are a lot of people who continue to just pay those fines and move on. So I think this is a major issue. I understand that a lot of houses may lose some value, but that's the name of the game when you buy a second home, isn't it? So I thank you to the city for bringing this workshop together today. I do wish there were a lot more workers who had been able to attend and speak up, and I look forward to the next one. Thank you all.
Okay, the young lady in the back. That's okay.
I hate microphones.
Okay.
All right. I don't think it's on. It's on? Really? Okay. My name's Donna Nelson. Lived here for 40 years. Worked, volunteered, paid my dues, did my part. I finally sold my business of 30 years a couple months ago with the dream of maybe being able to travel, just like Greg and Jamie have talked about. My kids don't live here, and I want to go see them. I want to travel. I want to rent my house for maybe a month. And Lori McChesney told me a month ago that I wasn't going to be able to do that because I didn't have the forethought to apply for a license that I didn't know was going to not be available to me because I didn't, like I said, I've been planning for 10 years to do what I wanted to do, but I didn't know it was going to be cut out from underneath me. And so, I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional because I want to do this. And you guys, if you make this ordinance retroactive on May 3rd, I sold my business on May 25th. It's just not fair. It really isn't. And sir, I live on Harris Avenue. I've lived there since 1985. And I don't see any rental signs. I see for sale signs, which I'll be one of those if you guys force me out because I can't do what I want to do with my home. I suggest maybe looking at people that are homesteaded. I know that's not going to be real popular with a lot of people, but I'm homesteaded. This is my home. I want to be able to do what I want to with it. Thank you.
Sarah Dolson, Keller Williams Realty. I unfortunately wasn't born and raised here. I wish I was. I'm very jealous of the people that were. But I've been here 12 years, and I know my rentals, my buyers that have bought rentals, their patrons are the ones going to the arts, going to the plays, going to the restaurants every night. They are bringing an enormous amount of funds into the city in spending it. People that live here every day can't afford to go to the waterfront playhouse every night. They can't afford to go out to dinner every night. They're working. So these people are bringing a ton of money into the city. And one thing we have to think about is that in 2020, other countries were shut down. People were forced to travel, and where else would they travel? Here. So I'm not sure Midtown and Newtown will be the desired location for people to go on vacation in the future. So that's it. Thank you.
Suzanne Washburn. I'd like to bring up another point that is another elephant in the room, as Greg mentioned and as Kate spoke to, which is the military. I was just told that the military housing allowance is $3,800 a month. And that puts a strain on our long-term housing. It doesn't affect the short-term housing, but it definitely puts a pressure on long-term. Also, when you guys mentioned renting your house for 2 or 3 months, you're going to lose your homestead exemption, so that isn't going to happen. You can rent probably, I think, a month a year per Monroe County, and not put your homestead in jeopardy. And the other thing is, we've got a lot of affordable housing units coming online. We've got Wreckers Cay on Stock Island. We've got the College Road project that's nearing completion, and we're going to start building down at Truman Waterfront. Those are going to be about 600 units total, I think, and that's going to alleviate some of this pressure. It's not immediate, but when I moved here 25 years ago, the headline in the Key West Citizen that week was, "Affordable housing has reached a crisis in the city of Key West." Here we are 25 years later. Thanks.
All right, again, remember, you don't have to raise your hands. The microphones are making their way back. They're just still up here in the first 2 rows, unless Jamie takes the microphone and steals it.
I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. These are afterthoughts of after listening. I know we're here to have a two-way conversation. Santa Clara has a 180-day minimum restriction, so those won't be vacation rentals, just in case anybody was worried about that. In 2015, we didn't have we have so many more units now. We have Marty's Place, we have the Poinciana Royale, we have the one behind Murray Marine, Wreckers Cay or whatever. There's been a lot. I think I counted 1,200 units that came on. So when we were talking with with Mayor Johnson, and we were trying to do a property management workshop before this came to light, we were like, we need more units. Like you were saying, building on the 4.8 acres, well, guess what happens with that? You can't evacuate. We have to have the ability to evacuate. So what's the solution for that now? Then why don't you loosen up the building restrictions? Like they said, that's the county, but in the city, Lori McChesney was talking about putting something above her office downtown, but you can't with the building restrictions. You got to loosen that. It's a two-way street where we need to work together and maybe be able to accessory units. They've gotten a little bit looser with that. Taking away the property rights of these locals like Donna that has given not only her business to this community, she volunteered for we had kids in the same schools. She was in tears. That just broke my heart, and I have goosebumps over it. She's who I'm fighting for today. Please reconsider the backdating and the zoning. The bad actors aren't the owner. There's bad actors out there, but it's not the monthly rentals because, like Sarah said, they're putting money into the community. You know what's happening now? People are renting monthly, and then those people are turning around and renting nightly. And then you have the people that are on Airbnb that maybe, I'm going to be the devil's advocate, maybe they don't know they need this license, right? But those are the bad actors. So we need regulations to search out. Sophia does a wonderful job in code enforcement going after these, but the bad actors is what's making Donna lose the right to be able to see her grandchildren. Respectfully, the commission is about to make a decision that's going to affect this community long after they're gone. And trying it for a year, have you ever seen an ordinance reversed? I'm just saying. I respect you of the utmost, but I'm just trying to have a two-way conversation about this. I don't want you to think that I'm being disrespectful because I'm not in any way. The turnout today is evident. What is the driving force to take such a drastic measure and not put it to a referendum and not hear both sides? So I commend you again for bringing us here today to have this two-way conversation.
I was just about to say you're limited.
Howdy, my name's James Herron, and I live up on Riviera Drive. And forgive me in advance, I'm not much of a public speaker, but I want to make 2 or 3 quick points. I've had a home here since January or sometime in 2011, I don't remember. But anyway, I've got this 30-day rental license or whatever. I applied for it right away because I couldn't homestead. I rented it one time in that time period to my neighbors because I realized what a pain it is to have the party house next door, you know. And but I just needed to do it for business reasons. I'm from West Virginia originally, and I spend almost all of my time down here now. I still have a business in West Virginia. We've got over 100 employees and been in business for over 40 years. Nobody gave me a dime. Referendum, yes. Yes, yes, yes. This is a community, and look at all of y'all. I mean, everybody's here and giving these thoughtful comments, and what a great thing, and just not dumb comments. So the military, the comment about the military doing their part, yeah, go out there and look. I mean, and I don't know that we can handle this on a local basis, but we've got a pretty persuasive governor, and regardless of whether you like him or not. And that needs to go up the chain. I think the military needs to do their part. I run the boat every day, go over there around, not Wreckers Cay, but around Sigsbee, those areas over there, those houses are junk, you know, and the military needs to step up. And if we need to ask our government, and I'm a Florida resident, if we need to ask our people in Tallahassee to put the pressure upstream, I think that that's entirely appropriate. And I don't think that, I mean, they're not going to listen to Key West. That's a big deal. There's a lot of houses over there. I feel that it's not the taxpayers' responsibility to fund businesses' housing issues. It is not the taxpayers' responsibility. I've been in business for 42 years, and I'm not looking for a handout from anybody, but it's just not the taxpayers' responsibility. And there may be an answer that, by the way, I'm trying to retire in just the next few years, sell my business, and at that time, I'm going to take a pretty good income hit, and you all know what it costs. I think my house now, the tax bill's what, $11,000 or something like that. That I paid $500,000 for the thing, and so I'm occasionally would like to travel, and it would be nice to be able to rent the house occasionally. Now I've had mine in place, and I'm not really got my arms wrapped around what they're trying to do here, but I don't want that right taken away from me. So just as a novel suggestion, there is a different answer to this, and it's all around us here. Being from West Virginia, we had coal camps, and everybody in West Virginia, all the coal mines had to provide the workers housing. Hershey did it in Pennsylvania. Right here, look at all the cigar maker shacks, okay? So maybe, just to throw a crazy idea out there, maybe the businesses ought to have an association where they come together and pay a monthly stipend per employee, and use those funds to build or buy existing houses or units, apartment buildings or whatever, and supply their workers at a discount. So do that. Let the associations pay for it. As far as building up, I know we're out of space and all that, but maybe they could give the workers back a stipend that work for them to help them. So let's say the rent's $3,000. Okay, if you're in the association, you give them the $500 credit against the house or whatever. But there's got to be another way. The cigar shacks are all over, coal camps are all over, Hershey, Pennsylvania. Let's let the businesses take care of it. And I'm a business person. So anyway, thanks so much for your time, and thank you so much.
Hi, I just want to say one more time, I think that monthly rentals are not our problem. These are people that spend great money in our community. They're involved in our community. They use the house 4 or 5 months out of the year, so it's not going to work this way. I also want to reiterate, I own a small vacation rental company, not nearly as large as most of them in the community here. The amounts of illegal rentals on Airbnb are off the charts. I know the city has hired more people to monitor this, but the fines are so low that it, like, people are like, well, we'll just pay the fine, you know? And policing people like me who do it right is fine. I don't care. I do it right. But what about those people that keep getting fined these small amounts and they're making gigantic income on their homes? It's just not right. Something has to be done about that. And I also want to commend Donna, who had Imagination Station, who took care of everyone's children in this community for 30 years. And she should not be denied the right to enjoy her retirement. Thank you.
Good morning. I just like to point out that a referendum would afford those who are working a 9 to 5 a voice, because there are many who could not be here this morning.
Hi, I'm Julia Besson. I've lived in Key West since 1992. Bought my first house on Eagle Avenue with $5 down in 1994 and have since progressed up the street. I now have a duplex there, and I rent my one-bedroom apartment to a bar back from Irish Kevin's for $11.50 a month. He has a pool and a washer dryer. He watches my dogs and my kids when I'm not home, and I'm glad to keep doing that. I also own a property management business that has been around since the late 80s. I started working there in 1995 and purchased the business in 2009. I represent 40 transient rentals and 30 monthly rentals. Our monthly clientele are a mixture of snowbirds, professionals, contractors, military, people working remotely, people relocating, wanting a little time to look around prior to purchasing. These people spend a lot of money in our community, and several of them give back and volunteer. I know some that work at St. Mary's Soup Kitchen, people who are on the board at the Friends of the Library, and other volunteer organizations. As a group of professional property managers, we got together and drew up a survey of our monthly property owners. We're going to pass this out to you to look at the results. It is important to look at these results of the survey. We had over 230 responses. Over 47% have owned the property for 5 years or more. 35% had rented monthly prior to purchasing property in Key West. 18% are registered voters in Key West. 79% reside elsewhere. 68% gave the reason for renting just to help cover their costs. 55% plan on retiring here in the near future. 95% use the property during the year themselves several times. Of those surveyed, 90% would not consider renting their property long term. However, if a tax incentive was offered, 19% would consider it. The vast majority were prepared to pay a higher annual licensing fee for their right to rent their property on a monthly basis. That was about it. We've come up with about 20 to pass around, and that's really all I have to say.
Demetria, real quick, for those of you who have filled out the survey, if we can get those passed to the back or passed to me so we can collect that data, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is John. I live on White and Olivia Streets. I hear a couple different perspectives here today, but I also hear some areas of consensus, and I think one of the areas of consensus is that there is a crisis here in terms of workforce housing. Some people have maybe suggested that it's been long-standing, but I don't think that negates the fact that it's particularly acute right now, the fact that businesses can't find workers and are closing, can't even find bus drivers for the transit lines here in the city. I don't know if that's ever occurred before. A couple other things I hear consensus on is that this is a market out of whack in terms of the amount of money you need to carry a monthly insurance is now, someone suggests, about $6,000 a month. That's a bit out of whack, and there's a couple reasons for that. I think the infusion of cash into the economy, low interest rates and things like that, and the COVID shutdown, and some of that might change the course of the trends that we've seen lately, but I don't think it's going to reverse completely. And that's just my own personal opinion. I think we all agree that there's a problem. I think we all agree that this isn't the silver bullet. This isn't going to be the only thing. But to argue that this has that short-term rentals have no impact on the current affordability crisis, I think is a little disingenuous. I think definitely inflates purchase prices, definitely inflates rental prices. So what can we do about it? One, we can try to regulate it. And I think one thing to look at is, why is it so difficult for someone that does want to do long-term rentals? Why is it difficult for them to do that? And I think the homestead versus non-homestead property taxes is becoming an issue. So how do we address affordable housing in the long term? One is to build your way out. That's difficult here for a number of reasons. Another way is to give tenants a rental subsidy. And someone referenced that. They said I'd slightly disagree by them saying it's not the taxpayer's responsibility. I think it's us as a community, perhaps, to help people that are in the workforce afford to live here. But then the third way of looking at it is to offer landlord incentives, right? And how do we do that? Well, those get expensive. I guess the lucky thing is that we are making a lot of revenue from the short-term rentals. It's just what restrictions exist in terms of how we can use that revenue. Can we use it as a community development fund that can supply rental subsidies or landlord incentives so that they rent to long-term workforce housing tenants? That's about all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that those of you who have not had a chance to speak, please grab a microphone. We want you to be able to provide your input before we end today. Those of you who have already spoken, please give the opportunity to those who have not provided their feedback.
Hello. My name is Wendy Zinsmaster. I'm with Truman & Company. I head up their rental division of about 125 plus properties in town. Forgive me for using my script, but I want to make sure I don't miss something. I've put a lot of thought into this. There's a saying I use frequently as basically I live and learn, and it's you don't know what you don't know. So that said, I think most of us are here today to make sure that each of you have considered what you might not have known when forming an opinion and ultimately casting a vote on this topic. More specifically, all the potential negative ramifications you might not have considered absent an inside perspective that we feel as industry professionals we have to offer. The bottom line is our industry depends heavily on and interacts routinely with many of the people that we're trying to protect affordable housing for. As you've heard over and over today, we see a trickle-down effect that's damaging to these very individuals and in many, many other ways. We're all faced with making decisions daily, right? So some are hard and some are simple, but ultimately we go through the same process each time we make one, weighing the good with the bad. And in this case, it seems obvious to us that the negative consequences far outweigh the positive. However, maybe there's something we don't know, Many of us here have devoted hours and honestly days now of our time trying to gain the perspective that makes this logical. Well, we remain at a loss today. I'm not sure we've had any of those answers come before us today why this is logical. And our rising frustration comes primarily from a place of not understanding how this is effective in the eyes of the people that developed it and in the people that supported it the day at the planning committee. I've watched that planning board meeting repeatedly and tried to gain the perspective that compelled the board to pass this, and each time I'm so frustrated that there was never any discussion regarding what this means on a long-term basis. There was discussion about the intricacies of adopting the ordinance and the practicality of some of the details as they applied to things like historical structures, ADA compliance, fire inspections, but nothing regarding the actual large-scale impact this would have from so many perspectives, such as financially and property rights and property values and all the things you're hearing about today. That said, I realize that's why we were invited today, and because you do value our perspective and we appreciate this opportunity. However, we simply need more facts. We've asked for the studies and explanations that support the effectiveness. You see, we're here today and we've done our homework, but we haven't seen any evidence that the city has done theirs. In fact, I think there's been a lot of acknowledgement today that they haven't. We're only scratching the surface just today on collecting the much needed data. The only real answer that we've gotten when we're asked what this is all about is, well, we got to do something. So at least we agree on that. We do have to do something, but without substantially more evidence about why this is the something, we just don't get it. Fortunately, the process of adopting an ordinance allows us this opportunity to discuss and collaborate and potentially learn what we might not realize from others' perspectives in order to make an informed decision. Because like I said, you don't know what you don't know. So please help us understand what we don't know with evidence that supports such a rigid change with obvious negative consequences. With fact-based evidence, perhaps we could develop a compromise. Without fact-based evidence, from our perspective, this is nothing more than changing the rules in the middle of the game and hoping that this was the something that effectively and substantially improves our affordable housing crisis to make the negative consequences worthwhile. We need more data. This is way too soon to even be considering this as a permanent solution without more data.
Thank you. Before you,
Hi, I'm Richard Tell.
I just want to say, those of you who brought something that was written, do you mind sharing it with me to have? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Richard Talmadge. I own the restaurant store and Cole's Peace Bakery. My wife and I moved to Key West in 1985, and we moved here because this is where we wanted to raise our family. And it's a great place. Love this place. Have been heavily engaged, as you all know. Just to kind of give you some perspective, I saw a guy renovating a property so he could house his workers, and he's tearing out the interior insulation, which was old Key West Citizens, so you know it was an old conch house. And he looks at the newspaper, and the newspaper article that he had in his hand said, an article with Commissioner Jimmy Weekly, 1985, is making affordable housing the #1 issue. That's perspective. Affordable housing has always been the issue. Right now, this affordable housing crisis that's been festering, Alton Weekly told me they tried to do something in 1979. And it's been festering because we can't get off the snide. It's come to this point where this, date is blowing up into the real estate agents' hands, and it's not tenable for them. And I get that. But we have to have conversations like this. I'm with Donna. I've worked my life off, and I'm getting ready to pass the baton. And I want to be able to take a couple of months off and still, I own my home, but I want to pay the exorbitant insurances and the taxes and still maintain my home. So what's important here is this conversation. And what's important here is acknowledging the crisis that we are facing. And you realtors need to bring to the game and the conversation real concrete solutions, because you can't have these clowns come in on the VRBO vacation rental kind of scene that we're seeing in this town, and they're buying up houses, paying cash for them because they got the cash and they know they can get the return on their investment by renting it out illegally. And they're doing it all over town. Every month, the guy that runs the U-Haul comes in, has his lunch at Cole's Peace, and he shakes his head and he goes, I can't keep enough trucks. Every month, people are leaving this community. And if we don't do something now, this has ceased to become, I said this on the dais 10 years ago. Got up here, told these guys up here, they're way in over their head, you know, they're doing the best they can, but this is a lot of heavy lifting, and it takes some real engaged solution finders, and you've got $8,000 a year commissioners trying to do a part-time job for a full-time issue, and we're still here. I said, you don't have a community here anymore. This is a real estate investment. I didn't come here for a real estate investment. I came here for a community. And the community is disappearing. And if we don't do something about it, all of these guys, you know, oh, the lady that's, you know, hey, I'm up in Wisconsin and I bought and I get that. But you're gonna see places just fold left and right because there is nobody to work the businesses, period. Keep up the conversation, bring thoughtful solutions in a creative fashion, bring the military engaged. Why aren't people around the table at this affordable housing crisis when you're talking, why weren't they at the table 20 years ago? I don't know. I'm just showing up every day, 8 o'clock, and locking my door at 6 days a week, doing what I love to do, and that is being a business here in Key West, and it's a very giving business. It's in a wonderful community. We're losing our community.
Once you, we have somebody getting ready to speak. We need to go back to Zoom. We don't want to ignore our Zoom guest, and so we don't want to lose you either. We appreciate you being patient. As you can see, we have everybody wanting to share their feedback, and that is important. So after you speak, we can go back to Zoom. We'll try to monitor that as best as possible.
My name is Rodney Culliver. I am a realtor and co-COO of Last Key Realty. Like Wendy, I have a script prepared today with a lot of thought and input from my colleagues and I. The realtors and vacation home managers of Key West are just as anxious to find solutions to the workforce housing crisis as any other local group of employers. All of us have had valued employees leave town because they cannot afford to live here. The new ordinance as proposed does nothing to make housing more accessible. Homeowners who have purchased and furnished a home for personal use will never offer it for long-term rental, even part of the year, let alone the whole year, because they want to use their property for themselves in some capacity. And what local is going to want to rent a house for 6 to 9 months only to be displaced during prime season? In addition, this ordinance specifies that any home not licensed for monthly rental as of May 3rd could never again be rented for a period of less than 6 months. Setting aside the very real constitutional issues of homeowner rights, it hurts the very industry that supports most of our workforce. As many homeowners turn to monthly vacation rentals, it may seem like the workforce is being squeezed out. This is ironic since the tourists who inhabit these homes for months at a time spend millions of dollars a year to support that very same workforce. Monthly vacation rentals are in no way the same as Airbnb rentals. Tourists who are renting by the month want to become part of the local scene, and they spend much more than your average hotel guest or cruise ship passenger. Tourism is the backbone of our economy, and our workforce is what built tourism. That's why we must find solutions to the housing crisis that will do no harm to the very business that supports so many of us here in Key West. There is a way. Let's have vacation rental homes contribute a percentage of their rental income directly to support affordable housing. Such a fund, like the bed tax, would generate millions of dollars a year and could be used in several different ways. ways like subsidizing housing directly based on income versus housing cost, subsidize homeowners who offer long-term rentals to our workforce, provide seed money for future development of workforce housing, subsidize down payments for purchase of affordable housing. This could be a win-win for everyone. Key West homeowners would have the freedom to rent their homes for 1 to 6 months to tourists that drive our economy, while Key West workforce would start to have access to more affordable housing. It's time to take real action to solve this problem faced by so many communities. We realtors and vacation home managers are ready to be part of that solution. Let's do it together.
Dimitri, we have one on Zoom.
Jason, would you like to go ahead and?
Yep. Joanne, if you're able to speak, you're up. You've got 3 minutes.
Can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Joanne and I own a home in Old Town, and we also have 2 rental properties. We considered recently switching over to doing shorter term rentals because it's more lucrative. However, we engaged in 2 more yearly rentals for our properties at this time. We were completely unaware of these new regulations that you have. I guess what I'm going to get to is that my suggestion would be, instead of talking about fines and regulations and stuff like that, for people like us, it would be nice if there was some type of an incentive, whether it be a tax incentive. We do live here. We have a homestead exemption on our primary residence, but our other 2 properties are subject to full taxes because they're rental properties. To keep us in the yearly rental business, which provides housing for workforce in Key West, an incentive, I think, would be something that would keep us interested in continuing our yearly rentals on the 2 properties that we have as income properties. There's no incentive to keep it as a yearly rental when you're getting so much more money from a monthly rental. Like I said, we decided to continue doing it a yearly rental now. We're a little disappointed to see that you're regulating without any warning shorter term rentals. But let's talk about having an incentive for people to rent their houses for a year and keep supporting the local workforce. Joanne, do you have anything to add? No. That's pretty much it.
Thank you.
So this is David Flynn. I am at Margaret Street, and chiming off of what the last gentleman just said, I mean, this is an article from the San Francisco Chronicle. Desperate to unlock housing, Tahoe program pays $24,000 to homeowners who rent to locals. This is happening. What he just said is occurring in other communities. I'm one of the 567. For a long time, I rented my home a month or 2 a year. COVID hit, I moved back to Key West. So now I'm in this category where I may lose my right to rent a home, and it's a right we have where the state statute is silent in that area. But I don't suspect the state's going to stay silent much longer if we pass things as written today. So I encourage, there is a problem, I would just encourage everyone to find a solution, but regulating is not always the best answer.
Hi, my name is Kristen Eklund. I'm a 26-year veteran of mortgages. I work for Coast to Coast Mortgage down here, myself and Audrey Green. Several in this room, I've done their loans from VA to, everybody that's involved in our community. Quar wanted me to speak to give you some statistics on what is really going on. I emailed the mayor, the county commissioner a year and a half ago, and I said, based off of what I'm seeing, I closed 300 loans last year. Based off of what we're seeing, we're headed for disaster. Simply because some of these second homeowners, I did with 10% down. they cashed in their 401ks, they cashed in their savings accounts to buy these homes. Now what's happening, I'm calling it COVID hangover. They're like, oh, we had fun. Now it's like, oh, we're going to rent it out. We don't want to come back until we retire or do whatever. So now they're trying to rent their houses out, but even in the lower keys, I have a VRBO up there, and our prices are driving down because there's so many right now. So what's happening, they're going to rent these homes out, but what I'm afraid of with all the utilities going up, the insurances, taxes, the economy, we all know what's going on. What's going to happen, those people are going to force to sell. They're going to lose their homes, especially in Key West. I've done the mortgages on $1.5 million loans. I know a lot of you guys think this was a cash environment. I did loans on $3, $4, $5, $6 million homes down here. They were financing at least half. If they're not going to cover this, and now with the economy crashing, their businesses are suffering. So this is a global economy. This is not just Key West. So for you to force the hand that could potentially drive down our market and ruin everything down here, just along with housing. When I emailed the mayor and everyone last year, or a year and a half ago, I was told, we're on it, we know. So I left it. That was my biggest mistake. I should have gotten involved more. I should have offered my opinions. I should have become the voice of just everybody. But I didn't. I planned on that, you guys knew what you were doing, and let's go for it. So the biggest thing is the housing. What I want to say, everyone living in those housing, I know some people over there because they're living there either, I just know them through other people. They don't have jobs. They're living there with kids, going to get their nails done, taking up affordable housing when we have somebody that's, could live in there. I've also done, Tanya and I did a bus driver, 26-year veteran bus driver here. I went through 4 co-signers? I mean, I got through the middle of it and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I have 20 other loans. This is just, but I fought and fought and fought till we got them in. I mean, if there was a will, there's a way. I helped the locals. I worked with their tax returns for years trying to get them. They all took hits this last year, paid a lot of taxes so that they could buy a house this year. So we need to fix the housing crisis. This is not, yes, we all need rules. Not everyone obeys by them, but that's what your jobs are, to make sure to enforce those rules. But we need to fix the housing. We're having COVID hangover. This is going to fix itself. The second home and investment market is going to fix itself if we give it time. It's just like a death. Everyone always says, don't do anything for a year. I want to see a housing committee of 10 people put together. Locals, realtors, the city. Put a housing committee together like I suggested a year and a half ago and fix this so that we can all, I can't, if my customer can't rent out their house, it's going bye-bye. They're either gonna sell it. Well, if we have an influx of sales, it's gonna drive down the market. It's gonna cause a market crash in Key West. That's just, it's gonna happen. So anyway, I'm glad to be here. I've been here 6 years now, and I appreciate everyone in this room, but we got to fix what's really going on first.
Thank you, Kristen.
Hello, my name is Rich Patton, and I've been in Key West about 28 years in January. Had a couple different careers. Some of you might know me as your local pharmacist, but I've since retired, and now I'm a realtor, and I have a small little company, and York Keys Real Estate. And when I first heard about this, it was from actually my friend David. And it was from the planning board. I think back in April, they had a reading, and they were sending it to the city for the first reading, and I just couldn't believe it. I thought this is just unbelievable, and the city they had a big enough response that they put it on the agenda to postpone it. They had it a second time. They had a big enough response that they postponed it. So we have this today, which is actually the first meeting of anything happening. And I think there have been tremendous ideas here, but no one has mentioned anything to the city about getting this off the agenda for the next time. And this really needs to go to a committee for a minimum of 6 months to get the right data.
My name is Peter Reisman. Is this on? Okay. I have a bias. A significant portion of my income comes from monthly rentals, so take it for what it's worth. But I just wanted to say how really impressed I am with having this workshop. I came here with certain ideas, and I've learned a tremendous amount just listening to people and their sincerity of their thoughts. Commissioner Kaufman, I also want to say that I thought what you said at the beginning was right on. We definitely have a problem, but this ordinance is not the solution. We need some real thought to it. I want to support the suggestion that you made and that was just picked up, that a committee be established. I know that committees can go on without reaching any solution, but this ordinance we have in front of us is not the answer. It should be removed from the agenda. We need some serious work on this issue. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bart Smith, and as an attorney, I like to stand in the front of rooms. So I come from a very unique perspective. My family owns multiple businesses down here. I am a partner in a law firm that has about 20 employees, with the Key West Golf Club, KW Resort Utilities, and A&B Marina, and all the restaurants. But I'm also someone that my family owns almost 150 units of affordable housing, and we've built this over the last 7 years. Not because of some ordinance that restricts the use of your property to short-term rentals, but because we have identified that there's a need for affordable housing for employees. And I can tell you that every one of our businesses has employees that we provide housing for. And we do this because it's a way to ensure that we have good employees and a place for them to live. It is not done through regulation. You do not provide affordable housing through regulation. People will not rent. People will not rent their homes because it is easier then to take the advantages of not renting and the expenses associated with renting long term. Right now, I'm in the process of building 36 more workforce housing units in the Lower Keys. Not because someone's giving me an incentive, not because someone's giving a regulation that's requiring me to do it. It's because as a business owner, I recognize the need for affordable housing. And I will continue to do so, and you will see the business community do so even more so if you incentivize it. Not by regulating, but incentivizing. Now let's talk about the converse. This May 3rd date that was brought up, I am in completely agreement with Greg's thoughts. I do have at A&B Marina some excess space on the second floor, and as an avid boater, anyone that knows people that have center councils, you can't sleep on them. And if you want to rent a place, you have to find a place to rent for the month. And so what we've recognized is that's one of our primary needs at the marina, just like the need for affordable housing. So we've gone through the process of designing and applying for B-Pass. We applied for B-Pass in September of last year, 2021. We were awarded the units in July of this year, and we submitted for building permits. All in all, we're already probably $50,000 into it, and in the next 3 to 4 months, we'll probably be another $750,000 into it, all based on the expectation, the investment-backed expectation that we would be allowed to rent these on a monthly basis. With this May 3rd date retroactively, that would take away our beneficial use that was based on an investment-backed expectation that we started a process based on a code that was in existence over a year ago. So the idea that you do something retroactively and take away someone's rights is just wrong. And to do so in this instance is entirely against the community and everything that we need and what we are looking at. What I've heard today is that the short-term rentals are not the problem. The problem is that people need to provide affordable housing. I know what we do. We incentivize it. Even the housing we have, the businesses pay towards that housing. The reason that it pays towards the housing, even if we own it, is because we have lenders, and you have to actually cover your debt service. And so if you give a reduced rate, you may not cover your debt service, which causes the foreclosure issues that come about if you do not cover your debt. And so businesses that can afford and are sustainable should be providing that coverage, that incentive. And that is where it needs to come from. It doesn't need to come from regulating people's property, taking away their rights, and doing so in a retroactive basis. And so I think the ideas that were brought forth are great. Provide committees, figure out solutions. The solutions are from the private sector and the government coming together and building this housing, not regulating people's property and taking away their property. Thank you.
My name is Owen Trepanier. I got to take exception with Paul Hayes, who was up there, and Suzanne. I take exception with what you said, that this problem isn't 20 years. That newspaper article that Richard was talking about came out of my ceiling. So I know it's been going on longer than 20 years. The monthly limitation on rentals gives me a problem. I like so many of you, I have more rental properties than I do employees. And I have more rental properties than the employees that I have that need them live in. So I house some of your employees. But I do month-to-month rentals on a state lease. And why do I do that? Because we do this thing, we do roommate-style housing, where we build houses that are designed for roommates, not nuclear families. And so you got people that are sharing a house, and if you get a bad apple, you need to be able to get them out in a hurry so you don't lose your good tenants. And the limitation on the monthly rentals will create a problem for me. It creates an eviction problem, which costs more money and causes my rents to go up like everybody else's. You know, the vacation rentals, when I'm an urban planner, when I started working down here, the vacation rentals were in in Old Town. And I was surprised when we started getting vacation rentals in Midtown. And then it really blew my mind when I'd have people coming in my office trying to get a monthly rental developed in Newtown. And since, you know, it's gone to Stock Island and Big Coppet. So do I think that vacation rentals are a problem for workforce housing? I do. Do I think that every vacation rental is a problem? I do not. I like the system that they use in Isla Mirada, which is an ad valorem value-based system, where they do a study and they determine what is the housing value for their workforce. How much can they afford to live in? And then they add a cushion to that, and if your house is worth more than that, then who cares if it's rented as a vacation rental, because an employee can't afford to live in it anyway. They also have a geographic limitation, where in the city that the rentals can occur. So, you know, I don't know if one or both of those, I mean, what we're adding now is a geographical, but it's not a value. I mean, frankly, you know, you're talking about a $5 million house. Who cares if somebody stays in a $5 million house? Because almost none of us can afford to live there. The last one is that somebody made the comment about charging an extra fee. And I know the city's limited on how that can be. However, the mayor championed an inclusionary housing ordinance that attached a affordable housing fee to the word development. And a development in the Key West Code constitutes a material change of use. So it doesn't seem that far of a jump for the city to tag vacation rentals with an affordable housing provision, and we can begin to collect funds for it. Thanks.
Tyler Sheff, I'm a realtor with Future Home Realty, and I'm hearing a lot of the same stuff, a lot of good feedback, but we're here for solutions, and that the only real solution is to add capacity or limit people coming down here. Obviously, the latter you can't do. That's against the law, federal, state, local, whatever. But how much unused property do we really have in the city? I'm not talking about the $5 million house that wants to be empty. How much city-owned property, county-owned property exists in the city limits of Key West that's not being used? And we say, well, we can't do that because of ROGO. Well, what are we doing on Stock Island? Does ROGO really even exist? Is that a thing? Because I'm seeing a couple hundred units being built right now, so I'm not with the ROGO argument. I'm not a kind of guy that says, we can't do that. I'm a kind of guy that says, why can't we do that? We have this building, pretty big building. I'm sure there's some wasted space here. The other end of the parking lot, we got the gym. What's that being used for? How many housing units could that be? We can't do that because of zoning. Can we change the zoning? We've got code enforcement issues. I mean, we have a big department of code enforcement. They do a great job. Let's start with their list. Let's put together a citizen alliance or a committee that starts with problem number one. We all know it. Corner of Market Street and Simonton, or Southern. That place, everybody wants it shut down. They don't want parking. They don't want this. They don't want that. How about the city buys it? Converts it into housing. How about the county buys it and converts it to housing? We can't say we don't have the money I just graduated the ambassador program, which I highly recommend, by the way. It's awesome. One thing I learned is the city owns a lot of real estate in the city. Shocking. And a lot of that rents for $1. So you can't tell me that we can't afford, the city can't afford, the county can't afford to build housing if it's that much of an issue. It absolutely can. It's public record. The city parking department has a $10 million profit. Wow. The budget, this is a well-run city. It may have its issues, all cities do, but this is a very well-run city. Look at the budget. The money's there. The buildings are there. How many code enforcement issues exist in this county that could be solved by buying those properties from the owners at fair market value? We got lots of legal help to work that out. We got appraisers. We got all this capacity to sort this out. This is a solution. This is a problem that has a solution. But it takes, hey, you know what? That house has been a dump and been vacant for 35 years. It's full of rats. Good. Mr. Jones, I know it's been in your family for 100 years. We need to buy it from you. Let's give Mr. Jones fair market value for his house. Let's get contractors in there. Maybe even city employees go in there and do some of the work if it's city-owned property. I don't know. I'm not the mayor. I'm not the city manager. I don't know what the capacity is, but I do know we can reuse this capacity. That creates units, and that helps solve this problem. Much better, far more effective than any sort of government regulation. Many of you probably remember, it always cracks me up, our own president, Ronald Reagan, said, the biggest fear of any American is I'm with the government and I'm here to help.
Hi. Is this on? Oh, it is. My name is Tracy. I just want to say that we have continued as a the city and the county have continuously promoted Key West. You are the TDC, you're taxing the homeowner, and you know that the bed tax, I think you mentioned the bed tax. That homeowner is paying that bed tax. And now you want to punish the owner with this ordinance, but you continue to promote come to Key West, come to Key West. So all of that TDC money, that needs to start being spent on housing. If you want to keep all these businesses going and keep the sunset, make them do it. Make the TDC pay some of these funds. They have to. Why? You're going to you want the millionaires to come in, but you don't want to give housing, but the TDC's got all that money that they're collecting from the millionaire who bought that house. So that's all I got to say.
Dorian.
Hi, my name's Bernice. Oops.
I'd like to get a show of hands of people who would like to speak because we are running out of time. We have less than 30 minutes. So if we're going to have to shorten our comments, I hate to say that, but we want to give everybody that's left, it's not many hands up. Okay, an opportunity to speak, okay? If you have any additional comments, if you would like another survey, you can write those down. But we will give the rest of you an opportunity to speak, but I just wanted to see how many of us here in the room still needed to speak. Jason also has one more person, so we'll make sure we get that person covered as well.
Hi, my name's Bernice. I'm a real estate agent in Key West. Not very good at public speaking, so excuse my nerves. I started in the service industry managing restaurants, so I do know that if you're doing 6 months in one day, come season, you're going to have a whole bunch of service industry searching for housing. You're going to create a lot of chaos in a busy season with no housing. So that's my first point. And I realize everybody's concerned with removing the rental licenses. And so here are some solutions I was thinking of. My husband and I bought a duplex in 2016. It also has a mother-in-law suite in the back, which we cannot rent full-time because it shares a kitchen with one of the units. So we use it as a landing pad for some people who are arriving, or if somebody has, they're between houses at the moment. But what I noticed is that in my neighborhood, within a 3-block radius, we have 2 multi-units that have been converted to single units that currently are wasting 6 BPAS rights. So my husband and I are not interested in doing this, but those B-pass rights could be passed on to people with mother-in-law suites such as myself to be able to put in a kitchen and to create a full-time residence for somebody in the service industry. And that's just 2 houses in a 3 blocks radius from my house. So 6 plus 6 equals 66, right? Yes. So I've also noticed that the Castle Marina is holding 15 units, which I've been told are for employee housing, which are not in use. So they have 20 employees, 15 to 20 employees, renting from our community when there are 15 units that could be restored, and add another 20 units. So now we have 66 plus 20 gives us a lot more. And I know at one of the meetings, Mayor said that she didn't understand why the affordable units in Newtown weren't being utilized, the rights to build a 600 square foot affordable unit weren't being utilized. And I think it's because there's no marketing on that. And I know that Shelby Blades has found some financing to encourage that. So we should implement those in our efforts to affect affordable housing. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was that the data that was shown earlier shows all these business tax receipts, but they're not differentiated between what's an Airbnb or what's a long-term rental, so it's not fair to use that. And I would suggest that where we start is to create that third tier without affecting anyone, let it run for a couple of months and see how many of those dots are actually vacation rentals. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Bascom Grooms, local resident property owner. I've owned a property in Key West on Thompson Street for 20 years. And one of the main issues I see with this ordinance is how it penalizes local resident property owners like myself and many others. You know, we've owned and occupied our home for 20 years, so we would have never had a reason to get a rental license. And there's many people in this room and many people in the community that are in the same position. Meanwhile, my neighbor who bought her home 5 years ago, she lives in Wisconsin. She's got a rental license. She rents it out. So if this ordinance passed, it immediately raises her property value and then negatively impacts the value of our property, as well as many other local resident property owners who, again, would have never had a reason to get a rental license because, you know, why would you if you own and occupy your home? So that's one of the main issues I have with it. A lot of things that I'm going to say have been, you know, said already today, but you know, I know also as a realtor in this community, the buyers that are purchasing these second homes, if mandated to rent them for a minimum of 6 months, they're just going to leave them vacant. You know, they're going to use them, they're going to give them to friends and family and just have them Venmo money under the table. Frankly, that's probably what we're going to see happen. So, I don't think that it's going to create any additional workforce housing really, because the ones that are currently doing it are presumably licensed, so they're grandfathered in. They're going to continue, and the future buyers, if mandated to rent 6 months, they're just going to sit vacant. So the other thing, the incentive idea, I think is a better idea. You know, incentivize property owners to rent long term versus penalizing them. I think there's some examples of this throughout the country now that we could take a look at. So I'd recommend that, and I also agree if we could continue to workshop this and not have it on as a first reading later this month. Let's study this a little bit more and get a little bit more information. Thank you.
My name is Margaret Romero, and I did not intend to speak at this meeting today. But after listening, which was what I came to do, I've heard a number of you mention give an incentive to people who are landlords that are renting full-time to workers in Key West at an affordable rent. And I have been pushing that idea for probably more than 10 years. I even gave it an acronym, SOAR, Save Our Affordable Rentals. I tried to get some interest on the commission when I was there. I couldn't get anybody to second the motion. But just briefly, it would be something similar to a homestead exemption on the homes that we live in today. I had some support from our lobbying agency and from folks in Tallahassee. I hope with the support of those of you in this room and some of our elected officials, we can get it active again. I think there's a way to do it, and I think we can count on the fact that we are an area of critical concern at a minimum to at least get a pilot going. I think it's workable, it's doable, and we should be able to get it done because there are a number of people in this town who are renting affordably and not making a killing doing what I'll call short-term rentals. I'd like to see us do that. And for those of you who keep saying, put in accessory units, that's wonderful if you're the person who's going to make money by renting that unit out, but it impacts the neighborhood when that extra 1 or 2 cars that are going to be renting that affordable unit are parking in front of the long-term family owner that's in the house because they can park in front of your right-of-way. So just putting up affordable accessory units isn't the idea. I've said many times, there's 3 ways to address the housing crisis. And by the way, I did find a campaign poster from somebody from 1986. I think I'll bring it to a commission meeting and show it to everybody, because I've actually had it framed on what affordable housing might look like in Key West. I think you'll get a good laugh out of it. But there are 3 things you can do. You can buy it, and we've heard people here say today that typical house, $850,000. So it doesn't make a lot of sense for the government to buy a lot of those houses because we're not going to be able to put a lot of people in it. We can build it. There are building efforts going on right now, or you can preserve it. And I think one of the things we have to do short term is preserve the affordable rental housing we have. And I'd like to be a member of that committee of 10 when we form it.
Thank you. My name is Teresa Evans. I am with Conch Collection, Vacation Rentals, and Property Management. I manage about 60 properties or so here in Key West. I've been here for about 5 years, and I have built that business all on my own. I have no vested interest in selling the property. My interest is strictly in the property management portion of that. Now, with anybody that is brought to me by a real estate agent, I do coach every single one of those buyers. What they're looking for vacation rental is sometimes not what the vacationer is looking for. So we do coach them in terms of telling them what their odds are in terms of what they can return as a long-term rental versus what they can return as a vacation rental. And sometimes we tell them it should not be a rental at all, and it should just go as a long-term rental, or maybe they shouldn't even buy it. So we do our part in making sure that everybody is kind of coached in the right way. Of my vacation rentals, I have a variety of transient, non-transient. I have about 22 units that are long-term units, and let me tell you, they are much more work than any vacation rental that I've ever managed. We are constantly facing problems, insubordinate tenants, having to do foreclosures, and we screen them like crazy. But during COVID and things like that, people were infused with so much extra money, they didn't want to go back to work. So there is a problem on this island of actual people wanting to work and physically being able to perform those jobs, but not wanting to go because they would rather go hang out at the sandbar or down at the beach or just go cruise around and do whatever and just continue to accept state money. I heard Mr. Ramsey say that the ordinance was based off of similar to Miami Beach. One thing that stands out to me, and that is that Miami Beach has infrastructure surrounding it. They have large transportation. They have buses that are running people to and from the suburbs and cities that are surrounding it that are able to support the workforce that is on Miami Beach. Saying that Key West or building an ordinance for Key West just in that means that you also need to take into consideration the entire Monroe County as a whole. There is no transportation. People have a luxury to live and work, be able to walk to work, and they don't want to pay these large rents, but they also don't have a car payment. They also don't have to pay car insurance because they're walking to work. So thus, if you're going to live right next door to where you work, you may have to pay a little bit more money, but that's your choice. It's a luxury to live and work right down the road. You do have a choice to go and live up in Big Pine and commute to work, maybe on a public transportation if there really was a bus that ran, or maybe, having a car, carpooling, or any other variation of that. And I do firmly believe that, like Jamie Caballero said, and many other people have reiterated, this is absolutely going to correct itself, because we have seen a huge flood of these monthly rentals come on the market, and we have literally told people it is driving down the rates for those monthly rentals, and they in tune are saying, okay, we'll hold it out for 3 to 6 months, and then eventually, if that doesn't work, we'll make it a long-term rental or we'll sell the property. So it is going to work itself out. And I would say, in the next 12 to 24 months, it'll be a huge change. But in the meantime, it would cause huge catastrophic trickle-down effects if you were to put this ordinance on immediately, as your bars and restaurants that are empty during the day, I mean, with vacationers and stuff are the only people in there. There's no local that I know that can go sit at Sloppy Joe's all day long and, give the 20 girls bartenders or, $100 so to make their rent or payments. I mean, you have to think about all the things. All of our housekeeping staff would have no job. I would have no job. I mean, I would sell my property, which I've worked so hard to be able to purchase on my own. We're always trying to, do things for the community and pull in events and things like that to make more money for the community. But then we're being looked at and having these ordinances where we have to go back and explain to the owners that have been nice to open these houses up for the tourism to be there, and tell them eventually maybe you're not going to be able to rent it if you don't want to rent for 6 months. So it's really kind of going to have an adverse effect, in my opinion. And I would love to be on whatever community or committee that's being formed. I did have lots of 14 years experience on the Big Island of Hawaii, where we did have similar problems like this, and we went to transportation. You learned how to move people from neighborhoods that were less populated into those areas that were boosting the money. That's all.
Thank you. We have one more. I think we have one more. One more? Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Ewald. I'm a local real estate broker here. I have 2 points, one concern and one solution. One major concern that I have for a lot of my clients that have purchased between January 2022 and the time that we were aware of the current ordinance. A lot of those clients used what was called a DSCR loan. Kristen, her company, another lender that she works with, Audrey, gave us a lot of these DSCR loans for our clients. Our clients had to qualify for these properties per the rental that they would accumulate over a 12-month period on a monthly basis. Those had to be verified by an appraiser for them to qualify for this mortgage. If we take away that right for all of our clients that purchased that property within the last 8 to 9 months, you're going to have a lot of defaults on mortgages, and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to lose their properties because they cannot afford them without their right to rent them. So that being said, the retroactive date of May 3rd is a major concern for a lot of people that cannot be here today, that I promised that I would discuss that vocally with everybody here to understand that people can lose their homes because they cannot afford the mortgage with the type of loan that they were given, with the rights of the property that they would have had at the time that we disclosed that they could rent those properties for 30 days. One solution I have, we currently, me and a friend of mine who's a developer, purchased a home, decided that, as a real estate broker, I have the opportunity to purchase transient licensed investment properties, but I decided to give back and buy a long-term rental. We built this property to the height restriction and built a second home underneath the property, okay? We were going to rent the property to 2 families, and we built it to code above flood, everything correctly. When it came time to get the CO, we had to sign a deed restriction that we could not rent the lower unit to another family. So now I have a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2 legal units built above flood to code that I have to rent to 1 family. Why? No 2 kitchens, 1 kitchen, single family. Why is the city of Key West in Monroe County having that type of restriction on the deed when it only hurts the workforce housing? That makes absolutely no sense. So I think that's something that needs to be addressed. The concern about, the mortgages, that's just a concern that I think everybody should be aware of. And I think everybody made a really great point. Not to reiterate, I heard it a lot today about insurances and taxes. That same home that I just bought It's above flood. I got to pay $5,000 a year for flood. Okay, guess who's going to pay that? Well, I got a mortgage. So if I got to pay the mortgage and I got to rent it to the tenant's going to have to pick up that extra expense. So the taxes are higher because it's not a primary residence. So I'm sitting here trying to give back. I get my mortgage at the end of the day, and it's so expensive, the tenant's going to have to pay the debt service. The down payment is 25%, in case anybody didn't know that, for an investment property. So after you pay 25%, you got to pay that mortgage payment every month. That's the amount of money that the tenants are having to pay. And that's all I have for you guys.
Thank you. Okay, we want to give the last comments to Commissioner Kaufman, Commissioner Davila, if you have anything to say, and the mayor. Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Greg.
Yes,
I
I'm going to do that. But
so patient. My name is Andrea Weitz. My nickname is the Greek. I'm a 50-year resident of Key West. I've been a realtor for 20 years. Before that, I was in food and bev, and when I got rid of loser number 1 and loser number 2, I bought my own home, and then I went to buy a couple of investment properties, which I detested owning, because to be a landlady, you have to have kind of a mean streak, which was much taken advantage of, so I got rid of those. I am now and have always been a property rights advocate. We are told what type and how high we can build our fences, our homes, what type, how high. We are told how often we can trim our trees that we planted ourselves and what circumference of the tree we can prune back. And we are legislated, we are codified, we are penalized, and we are violated to death in this town. So when I saw this ordinance come up, which the first thing you guys should do respectfully is take out that May date immediately, so that most of us that are here today and have to explain to our clients that bought with a certain, excuse me, our customers, that's what we call them. Oh, and incidentally, it's BPAS in the city of Key West, which is Building Permit Allocation System, and it is ROGO in the county, which is Rate of Growth Ordinance. And they both have to do with the same thing, which is evacuation time. So, respectfully, realtors and commissioners, get your terms straight, because I had to. So, with the expectation that some of these people have bought houses in order to facilitate the renovation and the building and the the living in these old town houses, they cannot be marginalized at this point in time. I live in Newtown. When I first came to Key West, I rented an Old Town. I knew I'd be arrested had I bought an Old Town. You can't tell me I can't paint my house whatever color I want. That was all the way back then. Now, I'm more eccentric and I'm worse. So, as you can see from the color of my hair. So, it distresses me when I hear that a body that we elected is telling us what we could do, what we have worked so hard to acquire. Respectfully, get out of my library, get out of my yard, get out of my bank account, and finally, get out of my brain. Thank you.
okay.
Hello, everybody. My name's Lorraine Salt. I work at the hospital. I've been a full-time employee for 6 years now. My rent, I live in Stock Island. My rent is more expensive than my monthly salary at the hospital. So what I did was I bought a couple of houses on the mainland, and I rent them to offset so that I can stay here, because I love my job. I think I provide a very excellent service to the community, And what we're missing here is that, God forbid, any of you should get sick. There are travel nurses that are here. They rent 30-day rentals, and they are looking after you at the hospital. Please excuse me, I'm a little nervous. I had too much Cuban coffee this morning. And I had my hand up on Zoom, so I decided to come to the meeting live, because the number one most important thing in life is your health. And if you don't have a nurse to look after you when you're sick at Lower Keys Medical Center, if you don't have somebody to do your x-ray or your ultrasound or your MRI or take your blood or receive you in the emergency room, we're going to be in crisis. We're already in crisis there. And I would say 50% of, I don't know the exact numbers, so please don't quote me, but a lot of the employees, including myself, have used 30-day rentals. I unfortunately sold my house here. Big mistake, and I've been struggling to get another house here. It's out of my price range. However, I'm not leaving Key West, so I'm willing to stay here and use my savings and my rental income to stay here. Now, if this rule passes on a 30-day rental, you're going to lose so many nurses, so many ancillary staff, that when you're sick, you're going to have to go to Miami. And, you know, this inflation is kicking all of our butts, and including mine. And I've tried to leave this town several times, but I'm here to stay because I love my job and I don't want to leave. And I'm on the verge of myself closing on a vacation rental tomorrow. And this is very upsetting for me, because if I can't rent to travel nurses and people at the hospital on a 30-day rental, then I'm going to have to, I cannot cover that mortgage. Interest rates have gone up to 5.5%. I cannot cover that. So I'm going to have to turn around and flip the property and resell it. And eventually I'm going to have to leave. So that's all I have. Thank you for listening.
Okay. It is almost 12 o'clock, and I want to yield the floor to the mayor and Commissioner Kaufman, who would like to speak. We got one more. Okay.
I'm really happy I get to wrap it up. I'm Shelby Blades. I'm a real estate broker. I'm speaking to you today with my investor hat on. I'm a landlord. I have 5 of those long-term business licenses right now. Wrapping it up is perfect. There are so many good points in this room. Number 1, stay of execution, more workshops, absolutely necessary. Number 2, we absolutely need data. Bernice hit it on the head, I think. If, after workshopping some more, we were to pass something creating the license category. The license category is not the culprit. Shutting the gate as soon as you create it, that's what creates your crisis and literally implodes the objective of creating the housing. If we can create the category, you will have your data. We will have the dots on the map. They will accumulate in months' time. We'll know who's renting. We'll have revenue information. We can track it with sales tax data. There needs to be a carve-out for the traveling nurses. There needs to be a carve-out for contractors, military contractors, people that are still, this is community contributor housing. The use of the word affordable is just ludicrous. So it's about housing for our people that are community contributors. That includes the people that do come in to town. In addition to the licensing structure, now we've got the funds. Increasing the licensing fee, absolutely. Creating the war chest. Mayor Terry, in one of her interviews, mentioned there's already a fund for down payment assistance, $200,000 a year, right? I'm a realtor, I didn't even know about it. That could be $1 million a year or more. Greg ran some numbers on it. We monetize the solution. Money helps build houses. How do we build houses if we don't have BPAS units? Owen's got it. He's got this perfected. This roommate scenario, I know so many people, they feel like they're felons. Oh yeah, I rent out that little studio that used to be my garage. They don't have to be. If they follow certain guidelines, and maybe we could offer a tiny bit of leniency. We make them put a doorway between the studio lockout mother-in-law and their house. Well, the pot roast smell comes through and the noises, and why not let them have a wall? You know, let's work with people instead of like what happened to Justin, smashing them and making it impossible for them to provide. Two people can pay $2,800 a month for those houses, or $2,800 and $2,400, and you could make your mortgage. But instead, to rent to one family and have to charge that much, it becomes prohibitive. So this roommate type housing, if we can just work with the landowners a little bit, the homeowners, and let us take a larger property and break it into two. I'm not creating a BPAS out of the air. I won't put a full kitchen in. But don't bust me because I'm putting in a wet bar and a microwave. Help me. Help me rent to people. Now, what's going to happen, people like me, I have 5 long-term licenses. I've had them for long. They're grandfathered. This thing passes, I'm the lucky one. I now have 5 of the golden ticket. It's going to be just like the transient licenses from 20 years ago when they closed the gate, or 30 years ago. They were worth $100,000 when I started in business 12 years ago. Now they're worth like $250,000. So my 5 units, I think they're worth $100,000 more with that golden ticket already, if that passes. I don't like doing short-term rentals. I know the math, it's a pain in the butt. But if I don't do it, I'm losing at least $500,000 in my equity. I have to do it. I don't want to do it.
Right.
Don't make me do this. Okay.
Okay.
All right, well, I'm sorry I couldn't bring any emotion to the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Darla, we apologize. Go ahead. 2 minutes, please.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Darla Fry-Guvermont. I'm the CEO of the Key West Association of Realtors. Thank you, Madam Mayor, commissioners, and all of you for showing up to let your voices be heard. I think it's fantastic. Thank you, Patty and Demetria, for your hard work and hearing us that we needed this very discussion. My job, and the favorite part of my job, is not only working with my members, but advocating for private property rights. And that we as Floridians have and are entitled to under the law. Local governments have enacted a plethora of ordinances that encroach on those very rights, and this ordinance would limit the ability to use your homes as you see fit. Commissioner Kaufman, you are seeing signage on the vacation rentals, not from new vacation rentals so much as ones that were there during COVID, and the city required vacation rentals to have signage put on each of those houses. So that may be why you're seeing those signs. The city in 2015 did a study that showed we needed 6,000 homes to correct the affordable housing crisis back then. We're not going to be able to build our way out of this, nor were we going to be able to fix that number and build enough to meet that number. On a personal side, I house 5 young people in my house so that they can afford to one day actually buy a home here in Key West. I do that out of the goodness of my heart, and perhaps maybe one of the ways that we can correct this is through a tax incentive for people like myself, offering their home to someone who's trying to build a business and to work here in the community. My members are in the business of providing the reality of home ownership, of that dream of home ownership, and all rights that come with it, and that's because that's who we are.
Commissioner Lopez, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, I just
just simply want to just thank everybody for their being here. I want to be clear though that there's nothing in anybody on the diocese mind as far as trying to negatively impact anybody. That's the reason that we're having this meeting here today, this workshop, so that we can hear from everybody. I agree that this issue, like many of our issues in Key West, is not unique to us, but that addressing these issues create a unique challenge for us here in Key West for so many different reasons. Again, I just want to thank everyone for their input and for coming out and speaking out.
Thank you, Commissioner Lopez.
Hello? You go? Oh. I figured you'd be last because, they get some. Oh, you're going to be last. Okay. I just want to thank also everybody. We got a lot of good input here. Fortunately, unfortunately, this issue is not going to be resolved on the dais before November. So I probably won't be voting on this. However, I think there is a candidate here that you may want to speak to. There's another candidate as well that you may want to speak to. Unless it is a referendum, then maybe I will be able to vote on it. So, but I do want to thank everybody for coming out and giving your opinion. And I think this is what's important, is to hearing from all the stakeholders. And I'm sure there's going to be some more workshops to hear from some more people and before any decisions are made.
So I'm going to remain seated because I took some notes during all the discussion and want to make sure I'm able to get through it. First of all, many of you may not know me, but I've been involved with this issue for at least 23 years, so I understand this is for decades. I've been chair of the Florida Keys Outreach Coalition. I'm in my 23rd year. We provide 76 beds of permanent and temporary supportive housing for locals, many of whom work in the workforce. And so I am acutely aware of the needs of housing and the struggles of the poorest in our community. And we have a poverty problem in Key West. Please go check out Point Siena Elementary School in the morning and look at the free breakfast program. Check it out. See what's going on in Stadium Trailer Park. See what's going on in reality for so many people who are struggling to live here, okay? So from that perspective, I'm coming into this meeting and I had really doubts that this would be productive, but I'm really happy to and pleased because I think some good suggestions did come from this meeting. Number one, I think we should look at the homestead issue. Denise, I heard you, so I think, and I'll talk to the city attorney about that. I think most of my colleagues will do that to see what we can do in that regard. I think Owen and you, Madam, you brought up the month-to-month issue, the 30-day rental for workers. It's not the intent, I don't think, of the commission to address the 30-day rentals for workers. The issue is to address vacation rentals. So I think we need to address what Owen brought up about the month-to-month rentals. I think that's a good point that we really had not addressed. I like the other idea of looking at what Isla Mirada is doing with regard to the threshold values, because many of you mentioned the Old Town properties that are $5 million, $3 million. That's probably not the target for this ordinance. So I agree with that. I think we need to look at that. But we want to look at the increase of the 30-day rentals to the extent that those units have been utilized by families and workforce. So what can we do to address that increase? And maybe the market will work itself out. Maybe you're right. Maybe we don't have to do anything for regulation. But what if that's not the case? And we also have to address neighbors that don't want to have these party houses next to their house. That's a big problem in Fort Lauderdale and Miami and all throughout Florida. So I agree we should also look at the May 3rd date. I'm sure that my colleagues are going to want to do that and discuss that with city staff. And when it comes to all these other issues that we heard, is it Ewald? Mr. Ewald? Is that Justin? I know myself, and I'm sure my colleagues, we want to hear from you on those issues specific to your properties. If you don't have my phone number, if you don't have my email, please get it, because I want to be able to help solve those problems, and I'm sure my colleagues want to do that as well, okay? Because we want to increase the housing stock. That's what we need to do. Some of you asked about how many units do we need? Well, the last report we had from the planning department was on September 4th, 2014. That was the white paper from the planning director. That paper said we needed 3,000 units. That was 8 years ago. We haven't produced a couple hundred, maybe. I don't know. It's a small number. So the question is, how many more studies do we need? Yes, we have to look at and be precise, but we also have to take action. We can't wait 8 years, have the report, we need 3,000 units, and then not do anything about it. And we're in a worse place now than we were in 2014. As far as I heard several people say that they think we should increase licensing fees or fines. We're not permitted to do that by state statute. That's the problem. Believe me, the commission would love to increase revenue and do that, but that's really a hindrance. Others of you mentioned the tax incentive idea. We want to do that too, but that is a state statute. That's the legislature has to take action to enact law to allow the city to do that. The other thing to keep in mind is that the taxes in Key West, 14% of taxes, 14% of our budget comes from property taxes. Does everybody know that, right? What that means is it's a very small percentage of what supports the city budget, and I think the gentleman here who was in the ambassador program mentioned that. And then the TDC, I love that idea. The problem is that's another state legislature thing. The state law does not allow the TDC to fund infrastructure to the extent that it could fund affordable housing. The city of Tampa tried to do that last year and produced a bill in order to do that, and it didn't make it out of committee. So maybe the realtors, the realtors, you all have a strong lobby. Can you please talk to your lobbyist, join the city forces, and say, hey, we need to change the TDC. We need that. Does it make sense to have a $10 million? It's $10 million this year for advertising for the city of Key West. Does it make sense to use that money and bring more people here when we can't service the people if we don't have the housing? So maybe if the realtors can join the city lobbyists and make that the #1 priority to change the law to allow the TDC funds to transition to pay for our infrastructure. Because whoever mentioned that we need to start, because of the limits on BPAS, whoever said in here that we need to start redeveloping and buying properties, that's probably what's going to have to happen. But what does that take? A lot of money. And we don't want to increase property taxes, and we want to take some money from the TDC. I think that makes a lot of sense. All right? So excellent meeting. I'm really surprised that we had all this productivity today, but I'm happy that I came, and thank you for all your suggestions.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam Mayor.
Okay, I am from the government and I am here to help. So take that all away. Just thank you, everybody. You've been open, you've been honest, you've been forthright. Everything that we could have asked for in a community meeting, you really have been. Let me address the May 3rd date, first of all, and I'm not sure why we have not mentioned this before, because we also asked about that at on the dais shortly after we started having this conversation. And we said, what's the May 3rd date? Well, it was the first time it was mentioned during city attorney's comments. But during those comments, we also said that date will be determined by the city commission. So I know there's a lot of angst about the May 3rd date, but that May 3rd date will be determined by the city commission. Okay, so let's get that one off the table. Do we need more conversations about this? Clearly we do. Clearly we do. I think somebody mentioned we don't know what we don't know. Well, we of what we don't know today, and thank you to all of you for doing that. Clearly, do we have an issue? Yes, but that's what communities do in a time of crisis, is we come together. And thank you so much for coming together with us. I've heard more proposed solutions in these last 4 hours than I have heard in the last 20 years. Were they prompted by an ordinance? Yes, but they came out. We're starting to talk about them. We're having conversations that we never have had before, which is really good for this community. Because you know what keeps me up at night is thinking about that family of 5 coming in, paying $1,000 a night for a hotel room and not being serviced for 3 days and coming back next year. I think about that. You have to get your meal. They're not coming back next year. So this is a community issue. We do have to find a way to keep this community staffed. It's really important because all of us are successful here because we have a successful community, because we're a desirable location for people who want to come and enjoy themselves. They not only want to come on vacation, but they want to come and live here. There are solutions out there, but we need time. I thought the recommendation that we put together a committee is a really, really good one. So let's come back, let's take the solutions, let's listen to our first ever individual who has the knowledge and the skill set to take us there, Demetria Simpson, who is going to be working day and night on our affordable workforce housing issue. Well into the night. So I just want to say that great meeting. We're going to take them back. I do believe that this should be pulled off the agenda, and it should be moved back. You know, there isn't anybody on that city commission that wants to write a bad ordinance and wants to enact a bad ordinance. So I believe we should take our time, we should listen, we should collaborate, bring it back, and create something that's going to do what we intended it to do. So, Jimmy, I know you're dying to talk. What?
Can you confirm if that will be taken off because we are expressing that we need more workshops?
That will be a vote by the city commission. Yeah, not tonight. No, tonight's a budget meeting, so. But it will certainly come up on the 20th when it is scheduled to be heard, and we can make a recommendation to pull it off, but it will be a majority of vote of the commission. So I would suggest that if you are concerned about that, you get in touch with every one of your commissioners, okay? But thank you so much for your honesty today. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. We needed to hear them, and I can't tell you thank you enough. So
Hold on.
go-
Thank you,
wait,
Mayor.
hang on.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate your words, but city manager gets last call, okay? This one time, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I expected good things to come out of here today. We have them. You were honest. You were open. It was hard to hear, but I want to thank Dimitri, Katie, everybody who was involved, the planning staff for being part of this. Ron from legal being here. But I said from the beginning we were going to listen. We did. We're going to collect the data, and we're going to come back. So thank you very much.